before. That's a whole lot of people there. Okay. I think we're live. Yes, we are live. Yep, we're live. Okay, hey everyone. It's Abdullah Samir. Had decided to have an impromptu live conversation. Rob from Speakers Corner from his channel wanted to have another conversation and have quite a few people here today, more than ever before. We have Stops from the Jinn and Tonic show as well as Rob. If you saw my last video, I was invited to the channel to speak. So yeah, let's get to it. All right, so can everyone wants to kind of introduce themselves? Maybe that's the best way to get started. And I believe we have IntrovertedSmiles with us as well. Hey, Intro, you wanna just speak up and introduce yourself? Yeah, you can go first, and then we'll go to Rob, and then we'll go to Stops.
Hey everybody, it's IntrovertedSmiles. Just trying to look at the camera this time. Abdullah was like teasing me about that. Keep focus on the camera, eye contact. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I have my own YouTube channel. It's called IntrovertedSmiles. I'm an ex-Muslim. I like to talk about experience, and I like to have the dialogue with Muslims. This is why I'm on this show. I think this show does a great job of communicating with Muslims who have doubts. So the Jinn and Tong show, I know that we're on Abdullah Samir's live stream right now, but if you haven't checked them out, please check them out. Great channel. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I really don't have much else to say.
Awesome. Okay, so let's keep going then. Rob, you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My video is not working as well, so I'll just have the icon here at the moment. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Yeah, so my name's Rob. I've got the Speakers Corner UK channel, and I co-host the Jinn and Tonic show. Maybe you can tell from the accent that I'm not actually British originally, although my dad was. So originally I lived in South Africa, and I was in fact a born-again Christian for a short while, and then sort of left that, and I just stopped being sort of a Christian in the sense that I didn't really think about it. We never went to church, etc. And then I came over to the UK. I've been here for a number of years, and sort of 7 or 8 years ago, I started to look into religion again. I started to watch things on YouTube, and it's only more recently, over the last couple of years, that I've really sort of paid attention and looked into some of the topics, and then started going to Speakers Corner at the beginning of last year. I had my first experience there. There's even still a video of me. The very first time I went down, I really didn't know very much, and I don't claim to know a lot now, but you learn as you go, as we all do. And so I was sort of hooked with that and interested in speaking to people, because I'd never really spoke to Muslims, and they predominantly were the people in Speakers Corner. And we do have some Christians, we've got a few flat earthers, some pantheists. You get all kinds, but predominantly it is Muslims in Speakers Corner. And so I started to chat to them. I started to ask them what they believe and why. And in the beginning, I was like, very fascinated by what they said. And so over time now, I've kind of got a good idea of what they say. I'm still obviously interested in talking to them. And I don't find their arguments in any way compelling. And in fact, I'd make a global claim now, sitting here, that I think every theist doesn't think critically enough. And so that's my challenge. Is I would be able to speak to any theist now, and I would identify where the critical thinking is not working as it would. Because when I see them debate with other people, then of course they are critically thinking, like they challenge the Christians on the Trinity, etc. And so I run as I say, the Speakers Corner channel and co-host it. And so we've got an interest in challenging it. And what I love about yourself and your colleague there, IntrovertedSmiles, is I love hearing from ex-Muslims, because whenever I hear them, they always talk about how suddenly they started to think critically. They kind of woke up from the matrix, and it's a whole different thing. So I'm really fascinated, and that's why I sort of found you on YouTube. You sounded, very intelligent and articulate. And I went, okay, great. I want to speak to another person that's been a Muslim so that I can understand it from your point of view.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Stops, you want to just quickly introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, hey guys. It's quite funny, and this is a huge coincidence, because I also hail from South Africa, as you can hear from the accent. But my story is a little bit different, because I actually still went to school in Iran, in Tehran. And we left when Ayatollah Khomeini came in, and then went to South Africa. And I didn't even know that I'm an atheist. I thought atheists are terrible people. This is what I was all led to believe. It's just that I was never exposed to any kind of environment where people were talking about gods and things. So, it was just there. And then I went to the States, I went to Europe, I went to all over the show. And then 10 years ago, I went to the Middle East. Started off in Dubai, then went to Kabul, went to Qatar, went to Doha, went to Abu Dhabi. And in this environment, I mean, it's automatic that people speak to you about Islam. And what triggered me into looking at Islam was my boss, after a meeting, he came to me and he said, okay, by the way, have you heard that there are scientific miracles in the Quran?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what is he talking about? And then I went back to the hotel, and incidentally, this is the same hotel that was attacked a few days later by the Taliban. And I was missed. I mean, I just jumped behind a pillar because the guys just came in shooting like crazy. And he saw me and he pulled this is what you call being on the wrong side of an AK-47. And he pulled the gun over, but I jumped behind a pillar and then ran for my life. And they went straight to the gym area, so they just left me alone. And then I started looking at this whole thing. What brings people to do things like that? Now, I'm not somebody who hates Muslims. I don't hate anything. I don't hate Islam or something. I just try and be objective and look at the facts the way that they present themselves. And that's what I've been doing. And I went deeper and deeper. And because I was living in the Middle East, I was able to go. I started off going to imams, to the different mosques, and then went to the Islamic cultural centers, and then started speaking to more and more people who were fascinated that somebody who's actually an atheist is so interested in Islam. So I've had a lot of conversations with these people, and it went all the way up to, because they were challenging me. So they actually put scholars in front of me and said, why are you not a Muslim if you know so much about Islam and things like that? So I had a lot of fun during that time. And that is when I started then making videos, and then I came back to Europe, and it's just been, doing different things regarding Islam.
So what's your background? Did you say you're not born Muslim, or you were born Muslim? I didn't catch that.
No, I came. My parents are actually Christian. They are Protestants. So I went to Sunday school. I did all these things, but I've never believed that. Even as a kid, I used to laugh because I thought this was hilarious when the guy wearing a black dress in front was standing there and lifting his hands like they were radar antennas or something like this, and talking to people, make the Holy Ghost come with you. I used to giggle, and my parents used to stop me, and then they stopped taking me to church, which was quite okay with me.
So you had quite a lot of experiences in Muslim countries. You've lived there for a long time. You live among Muslims, and you've actually got a lot of exposure to Islam. You've studied it. And you're willing. So I think what brings this all together here, what the common element is, from what it sounds like, is all of us had Islam as a big part of our lives, affect us in some way or other, and we're all motivated to spend our free time to help others. I think that's kind of how I see it, anyways. Like for me, it's to share what I've kind of discovered for myself with other people. And is that the same motivation for yourself as well?
Yep.
Yeah, I would say the same as well. I want to challenge bad ideas, and I want people to think critically. And I think if they do, then they would find that belief in a supernatural deity, particularly the Abrahamic ones, is not tenable.
Nice. And Rob, it sounds like you spend a lot of time on this, actually. Like, what motivates you? Like, what motivates you to talk to people about religion and about belief in God? Like, why do you do this? Like, why do you go to Speaker's Corner? Why do you discuss with people? Like, I know part of it is intellectual challenge. It's kind of fun. The other part of it maybe is you like to see the light go on in people's eyes when they think about something from a different perspective they haven't thought of before. But what else is it? Like, what is it to you?
Yeah, I think you've kind of hit the nail there where you said light go on for people. I don't expect anybody in Speaker's Corner to ever change their mind. And paradoxically, I actually think that they will become more religious or more firm in their belief when they walk away. What I do hope is that either somebody watching or people on YouTube who are watching will go, right, Rob's presented a different idea, or it's not my ideas, I'm borrowing it, I'm learning from many experts out there and many different things like yourselves and others. And that's what I'm presenting. And I hope that people will then take a step. You posted something on Facebook about a particular person that had seen something of yours and made a change. That's my idea, is to get people to think critically. And if they do, they would leave Islam or leave Christianity or whatever the case is, and embrace and start to think about the world and embrace things differently, and start to think for themselves and not just follow something that was, supposedly created 1400 years or 2000 years ago.
But why do you want people to Like, if people are happy following religion, like what's your problem? Like, you know what I mean?
Yes, good question. So there is an argument to be made for religion in the sense of its utility, its community, etc. However, I think there's bad ideas in religion, and bad ideas translate into bad behaviors, and we can see it across the world. It's not just religious people, by the way, so I'm not claiming it's only religious people. Of course, there's bad atheists, bad everybody, but there's specific doctrines, for example in Islam, that say certain things. I could improve the Quran in one sentence. All I have to do is borrow the first tenet of Jainism, the ancient Indian religion, which says do no harm to any living creature. If that was the first verse in the Quran, we would not ever be talking about any Muslim suicide bombers. They would be people who might have believed and aren't anymore. The more fundamentalist a Jain becomes, as Sam Harris has said, the less you have to worry about them. And it's quite the opposite in Islam.
Yes, that's true. And Islam kind of presents itself in a way that it's a balanced life. So, when you said don't harm other people, don't harm any other living creature. Well, animals are here to serve us, and, the Islamic view is that, well, God created us and he's the one that gets to decide what's right and wrong. So slavery, well, you know what? Like, if God decides that slavery is okay, then according to Islam, then yes, slavery is okay. Right? I guess it's a divine command theory. Is that what it's called? It's God says so, therefore it's right.
Yes, so they've got a lot of instructions that come down. The problem with divine command theory is it doesn't give them an ethical system to face a challenge that is not in the Quran. So ask a Muslim, what is their position on stem cell research or cloning or something else that's not in the Quran, and now notice what they have to do. There's nothing in the Quran that tells them, because they're following a list of instructions. So God told me to do X, I will follow that, otherwise there's severe consequences. But the Quran doesn't cover everything, as we know. So ask them, well, what would you do in this scenario? And now notice what happens. What do they do? How do they appeal to work out whether it's right or wrong? And we have, I believe, as non-believers, secular humanists, or whatever term we want to use, we've got systems that we can use to give us answers, at least in principle, if not in practice.
And you made an interesting point where, when it comes back to Muslims, they're always tied down to what Muhammad said and did in the 7th century. And that becomes the basis of everything that ever happened. And if it so coincidentally ended up being the case that somebody asked Muhammad, like, what do we do about this? And then he said something, well, from now on, forever and ever, Muslims are tied to that specific ruling, just because coincidentally, or they would say according to, Allah intended it to happen. For example, right, it so happened to be that in the life of, according to the official story, so, most of the time when I talk about Islam, I acknowledge and I accept the fact that the hadith literature, it's problematic, there's a lot of issues with it. But for the sake of discussion, because Muslims accept that this is true, for the most part, it helps to, to start the dialogue. So according to the hadith, according to the story, Prophet Muhammad, he would say, actually a Jew came to him, or Jews would come to him and say, Assalamu alaikum, meaning like death be upon you, not Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. And so he would say, wa alaikum, meaning, and the same to you. And then according to the hadith, Aisha got mad and said, did you hear what he said to you? He said, death be upon you. And, she cursed the Jewish person back. And, there's a lot of anti-Semitism in the hadith literature. So this is one example of that. Of course, there's bad Jews, cursing the prophet, like bad Jews. Anyways, so because of this, at least according to the Salafi understanding, until the day of judgment, if someone says, and by the way, this creates a lot of awkwardness, and I'm sure intro has experienced this as well. When you say assalamu alaikum to someone, they don't know what to say to you. It's like, I'm telling you, I've had experiences where I'm like, assalamu alaikum to someone, they're like, wa alaikum, hey, how's it going? And they're not even sure if they're allowed to tell you, like, wa alaikum salam, peace be upon you, because according to the hadith, the Prophet said, if a non-Muslim says anything, like, greets you, you're supposed to respond with, like, wa alaikum, like, and to you, not wa alaikum salam, right?
Yeah, so, I definitely had that happen, though. I want to just share that there was a Christian that actually knew that he should be deserving of getting the greetings of peace. And I did say wa alaikum to him, and he was just like, you're not going to give me the full salam? I was like, oh, man, he knows about it. So it does create an awkward situation.
Yeah, it's worse with with Arab Christians and Jews because they know about this, right? So they're like, they feel like, why are you treating us like this? Like, like, can't you? It's so silly, like, you know what I mean? Because of this very particular thing that happened, and there's other examples of this as well we can think of. Another example I can think of is like Prophet Muhammad in the Hadith says that I would have forbidden you guys from doing it while your wife is breastfeeding. So in Islam, you're supposed to breastfeed. The mom's supposed to breastfeed for 2 years. So he was gonna forbid all Muslim men from having sex with the wife for 2 full years, or at least until she's done breastfeeding, because he thought it was going to create some sort of harm. But then he saw those Romans were doing it, and their kids are fine, so it's okay. So it's halal because apparently, and I think, maybe some of the rulings in Islam tend to kind of show this 7th century mentality where, like, you can't marry your foster sister, meaning if there's a lady who you got married to and someone tells her, by the way, I breastfed you and I breastfed your husband, like, 45 years ago, you guys become haram for each other. You can no longer be married because she's your foster sister. So it's almost like the milk has some metaphysical power to make you related. Excuse me. And so it's like Muslims, the Prophet probably thought that, it affects the blood or something. And, so we see a lot of examples like that in Islam.
And just going on that, I had actually a real situation where I had a friend who he had a foster sister, just like you said, and just because his mother breastfed her, no other relation other than that. He was telling me like he's so attracted to his foster sister, and he even thought about marrying her. But then he convinced himself that he had a jinn in him, and it just hell broke loose. Like started family drama and things like that, and he had to like program his mind. The imam had to like come in and deprogram his attractiveness to her just because she was breastfed from the same mother.
And it's not like she's not really a sister, right? I mean, she's just another lady that happened to drink some milk. Like me and my wife, we've drank milk from the same cow. Like that cow doesn't become my mom, but why does it become like your mom if it's a human? It's weird, right? Like, and the other example I can think of like this has to do with mahram, right? The idea of mahram and how if someone's mahram to you, if someone's not mahram to you, like let's say you want to adopt someone. So if I wanted to adopt a daughter in Islam, because she's not mahram to me, she's not related by blood, I'm not allowed to touch her, I'm not allowed to kiss her. So even if I adopted her and she was my child, it would create problems for the relationship. So people have to do all sorts of weird workarounds. And I have family members that actually had adopted, and what they did was, well, first they tried taking some sort of drugs to get the milk, the best milk, so they could breastfeed the baby, so the baby would become mahram. And that didn't work. Then they went to another extent of getting the sister to breastfeed the baby. So legally, the baby becomes like a nephew / niece, and that way you can be alone with them and all that stuff. Otherwise, the Prophet said a man and a woman cannot be alone except shaitan is a third person with them. So, in order to avoid this like uncomfortable situation of like having a non-mahram living in your house, and all of this had to do with Zainab, right? All of this had to do with because Muhammad wanted to marry Zainab, so he made adoption, forbidden. And I have a full video on that. Yeah. So yeah, there's lots of funny examples like that.
I think that does something to your mind, man. Like the hadith where it says shaitan is the third person, because every time I was alone with a woman in a room, I thought about that hadith, and that just heightened emotions, and that made you more paranoid, and it just made it a dirty situation. So I think there's a lot of psychological implications with that hadith. So damaging.
Yeah, but if you go the opposite way now, if you look at the way that the Sharia is structured, it is actually possible for you to go and have sex with your own daughter. Because if you have a wife and she has a daughter, then you get divorced and you then go to the daughter, you are actually allowed to marry her. And this is not haram in Islam.
You mean your adopted sons? Your adopted?
No, it's your physical daughter.
Say that again?
You are, under certain circumstances, allowed to have sex with your own physical daughter.
I've never heard of this before.
Yeah. I know a lot of Muslims don't know this, because what happens, the way that it works is that you, according to Sharia, according to Hadith, you can divorce somebody where you have had a daughter with that woman, and then if you then go and the daughter comes and lives with you, you are allowed to have sex with her because
I
you are
don't
not
think
related
that's
to her.
I don't know if that's true, because she's still your
Yeah.
daughter and she still
No.
inherits from you according to the Quran. And we have examples of people that divorce the wives and the daughter is still mahram. I mean, I've never heard that before. I don't know based on what you've heard that, but maybe that's not correct, because my understanding is your daughter is always your daughter, whether your wife dies or she doesn't die. She inherits from you. She takes your name, like you know what I mean. So I don't think that's correct, to be honest. By the way, I'm speaking from Sunni Islam, so I don't know anything about Shia Islam. I don't know anything about. I mean, I don't know anything, but like I'm speaking from my understanding as a Sunni Muslim that this is not the case. But if it's your stepdaughter, that's a different story. Your stepdaughter would be like, yeah, I'm not sure. That's again a questionable case, because your stepdaughter is like mahram to you. Again, kind of weirdly, not weirdly, but makes sense. But then does she stay mahram to you if you divorce the father? I don't know. These are all like, strange rules, strange ancient Islamic rules that came out of Muhammad's head. So who knows what he was thinking?
Yeah,
The
but
one
this is
that-
exactly one of the constructs, and I need to look it up because this was also weird for me. But there is a construct that allows that. I just can't remember in which video I did this. I can't from the top of my head remember where I used.
That's fine. That's fine.
Could you guys speak on incest? Because I've been challenged in the park once, and there's a video there with a Muslim, who's a bit disingenuous. It's not, the critical thinking is not that particularly high, but it's also somebody that misrepresents people's position. And so I was asked, "Hey, do you think it's okay here's the position." He's very specific on it. Do you, Rob, as an atheist, think that it's okay for a son to have sex, a son that's over 18, that's an adult, to have sex with his mother if the two of them say it's okay? So this now for him is direct incest. And my position, because I never really thought about this, so my position is or was, if we can demonstrate in some scientific way that it's either biologically, neurologically, or physiologically negative, then we've got a right to say it's wrong, over and above their assertion that, yeah, it's great. If we don't have that, then on what grounds? Now, I wouldn't do it, and it's not something, and I would be quite repulsed by that. But in order for me to say it's wrong for other people, I need something other than my own opinion and my own feelings. Could you talk about that from an Islamic point of view as well? Because I do think that there is incest is allowed from first cousins, etc. So what would be your view, firstly, as a non-believer, and then what would you say from an Islamic point of view?
Okay, so first of all, yeah, cousin marriage is definitely allowed in Islam. In terms of, yeah, what was I gonna say? Okay, so yeah, marrying. Oh yeah, what I was gonna say was it just shows you that the fact that cousin marriage is considered okay, but not marrying your milk sister. It shows you just how much the reference of 7th century Arabia was to Islam, because the whole idea of foster motherhood, it was a very big part of pre-Islamic Arabia and Islamic Arabia, of course, as well. And the cousin thing, I don't know what the reason for that is, but I have looked into this a bit from a non-believer's perspective. And from a believer's perspective, it's easy. It says in the Quran, Hurrimat alaykum ummahatukum wa banatukum wa manat. Like, so the Quran says haram to you, forbidden for you is your mother and this and this and this, and and the one that your foster sister is included in that list, despite there being no good reason for that. So as a Muslim, I'm like, yeah, that's easy. God says so that's it. Now, as a non-Muslim, I happen to be, I just started reading a bit of stuff on ethics. And Peter Singer has actually discussed this in his book. He talks about how a parent-child relationship, incestual relationship, would be harmful. Psychologically, there's a power imbalance. Just like in Islam, you have a power imbalance between a slave owner and a slave. So to allow the slave owner to have sex with his slaves, it's not a proper situation where you can give meaningful consent. So for that reason, and he kind of elaborates, if you want to look up Peter Singer, incest, and he explains why, the parent-child relationship. Now, in terms of brother-sister incest, he actually talks about that as well. And he says, normally, when you grow up, together and you grow together, you naturally don't have, you're repulsed by your sister because you grow up together, and there's a biological reason for that, because the people that would have done incest back then would have all died out because it creates harmful genetic situations. The ideal situation is you have a little bit of distance between yourself and your potential partner. So if it was the case that people were attracted to their siblings back at some point in history, they would have been eliminated. And we are the ancestors that survived because we had a different type of sexual attraction than those ones may have had. Now, he does say that there's been cases where a brother and sister have actually grown up completely apart from each other, fallen in love with each other, and then they got married, or they were like sleeping together basically, right? And then they found out. So the question is like, what do they do now? And he was saying, because it happens so rarely, it doesn't, in a situation like that, there's a lot of social taboos which make it difficult, but it's even worse because it becomes illegal and you can go to jail, and it's actually not hurting anybody, right? So the way I look at ethics now is who's being hurt by this relationship, what's the harm, right? And that's how I judge my morality. That's the basis of my morality now, is what are the harms and benefits. So if it's not hurting anyone in a situation like that, and it happens once in 100 years, and there's no issue with having kids, because you can't say it's bad because of genetic defects, because now what happens is, well, what about two people that are genetically related, and if they do it, they'll have kids that have a high defect rate, what I'm saying, like a high child abnormality rate. So if you make that like forbidden, then you have to make this forbidden and illegal as well. So that can't be the basis for whether we judge right and wrong, right? So that's kind of like what that's basically it. And that's a good point about Adam and Eve's. According to Muslims, some Muslims, they believe Adam and Eve's children committed incest repeatedly to make all of humanity, which of course makes no sense. But yeah, okay, that's all I have to say.
Should I, because I found this thing with the daughter, should I give you the context?
Yeah, sure, yeah, go ahead, yep.
Okay, let me explain this. We're using an example based on Ibn al-Arabi, it's a Shafi, okay? So a Muslim man has sex with a married Muslim woman. She becomes pregnant, establishing extramarital sex. As per Sharia, the man receives 100 lashes and the woman is sentenced to be stoned. At age 2, the baby girl is taken away from her mother. The stoning is postponed indefinitely because in some countries, but some, stoning is somewhat unacceptable, and the woman goes to jail. The child goes into a foster home. The woman is now divorced, later marries her sex partner, who, when the daughter turns 9, marries her too because she is not considered his legal lineage due to her birth out of wedlock. So he's married to the daughter and the own daughter at the same time.
Which book is this?
This is based on Ibn al-Arabi.
Okay, so this is a situation where your daughter is illegitimate daughter, you're saying?
Correct.
Oh, I don't know that. I never heard of this before. That's interesting. You could be right, actually. That's very interesting, because I've heard as well that in some scholars, consider that your illegitimate child does not inherit from you. I don't know. Like, I never looked into this, but yes. That's kind of creepy. And it actually brings up a good point I wanted to mention, which I forgot to mention earlier on, which is how, when you compare secular law, tort law to like Islamic law, when you look into the books of, when you look into these legal books, like the Hanafi books especially, you see the most weird shit that you can imagine. Like if a man has sex with an animal, he doesn't need to take a bath or something. Like all sorts of weird stuff. And it's
depending on how many drops have emitted.
Like all sorts of crazy stuff. Like it's just like, and most Muslims don't know this, right? They don't read these books. But if they read these books, they're like completely shocked, because, I mean, there's all sorts of weird stuff in there, right? Because all has to go back to what Muhammad said, and this guy said, and that guy said, and how they interpreted, and what was preserved. And so you're stuck with this, going back to this very shaky foundation, right, for everything. And like Rob was saying about cloning and like You have to go back to see what Muhammad said that maybe somehow could have been interpreted in such a way that someone can kind of understand and then make an analogy and say, okay, therefore cloning is haram or halal. Like it's like that's the challenge I think for Muslims, right? And a lot of them don't think about this.
And the thing is that what the point that Rob was making, I think, is an excellent one too, because if you are looking at the way that things need to be interpreted, how do you know that the next guy is going to interpret it the same way? So if you have a relationship between a man and a woman, the thing is what most Muslims don't understand. If I want to have sex with my mother, theoretically, I may be able to do that without any kind of remorse. But practically, and this is the point that he made, he is repulsed by it. And this is the point. I do not need a Muhammad telling me what to do. I do not need a Quran to tell me what to do, whether this is right or wrong, and whether I feel bad about it or not. And this is the thing, because I hear a lot of Muslims telling me, yeah, but you can just indulge in whatever. So you go clubbing and you rape any woman that you can and you want to, because you don't have to worry about anything. And this is the point. No, my morality is a lot higher than theirs, because they are not doing it for the fear of being punished, or they do something for a reward. Whereas if I do something good, I do it because I want to. And if I don't do something, it's because I don't want to. And this is something they don't understand.
Yeah, they definitely don't understand that because they have so many weird rules. Like according to the Quran and Hadith, if a woman marries her husband and let's say she gets a divorce from that husband, and then she seeks out another man and she marries that man, but then realizes she made a mistake marrying that second man. According to Islamic law, according to the Quran and Hadith, she has to have sex with that second man before she divorces him and goes out with that first man that she realized she made a mistake with. This is the problem with Muslims. Like when you have like 7th century Arabian rules that don't have a justification or make sense, I have so many Muslims that will question me and say, what are you doing now with your life now that you left Islam? Like, do you think it's okay to go rape people? And it's just what Rob was saying. Like, I understand where Muslims are coming from when they ask him questions like that, because they want to get into this objective morality argument. They're trying to trap people like Rob and others to say, well, do you think it's okay to do this? Why or why not? Because they don't understand it. Everything is based on 7th century Arabian rules.
Yeah,
And I think
I would just
carry on.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say problem with Islam, not problem with Muslims. But yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I think a lot of the problems would go away from Muslims if they would just accept that the book was done in whatever sense it was done, even in the 7th century, and it was meant for 7th century. The big problem comes, and that's why we're all talking here, I suspect, a great deal of the time and taking some of our energy, is because they are claiming that it's a book for all time, for all people. And it's not, you don't understand Arabic, so you have to accept English translations, of which there are multiple. And then when you question the English translations, or they change over time, as they have with the Hubble's expanding universe in 1925, now we run into some problems. So if they drop that claim, we could all go, do you know what? Okay, that was what was happening in the 7th century. It's not great today. We understand that's what the people did because they didn't know any better. But of course, what they're trying to say is, no, this book is for everybody for all time. Now they're trying, because they've had a collision with Western modernity, now they're desperately trying to make it fit so that it'll be palatable for people in the West. And that, of course, just appears untenable. And so they make up all kinds of things, or there's certain interpretations that now are trying in some desperate way to make it okay for us. And I'm sure that the people on this panel look through this and just go, you guys are just trying to make something up here to try and make it fit. It's fine in the Middle East, they don't have this problem, marrying 9-year-olds and doing X, Y, and Z. That's all fine, where they're the majority and that's what they've been taught. But when they come over to our Western countries now, oh my goodness, now they're bringing over what we consider barbaric ideas, and now there's a challenge. There's a scramble to try and make it more palatable for the Western society, and that, of course, is where it trips them up.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to make it palatable for young Muslims growing up in the Middle East as well, who are exposed to the internet.
Yes, I had somebody, when I spoke in Speaker's Corner, I was amazed. I had a youngish gentleman, early 20s, from Saudi Arabia, saying to me, Rob, you wouldn't believe it. There's, in Saudi Arabia, there's a lot of young Muslims that are growing up, that are using the internet, that are rejecting a great deal of the teaching. Maybe they're still Muslims to some degree, but far more nominal in the sense that they don't follow, the Wahhabist, Salafist type approach. And they want to find out, they want to explore the world, they want to get different ideas. And of course, people like Sam Harris and some of the the more famous atheists get hundreds, if not thousands, and ex-Muslims as well, Sarah Hayder, and you name all of them. They're getting hundreds and thousands of emails saying, you know what, I watched your stuff and it's changed my life. And that's where I believe the biggest value is the internet and the exchange of ideas. That's going to be the, in a sense, the biggest challenge for Islam to overcome.
Yeah, but hang on, even in Dubai, you have the so-called forbidden pages. Like if I, in Dubai, for example, I entered something about the Council of Ex-Muslims in Britain, for example, it came up with a forbidden page where you have a huge big banner saying you're not allowed to access this. If this is an error, contact the information ministry and we'll open the page. But they are restricting it left, right, and center, and even more so, even in Dubai, even more so than if you go to Kabul, for example, where half the internet is blocked.
Yeah, I've heard about. I wanted to actually, I really wanted to kind of get the lowdown on this and how bad it is, because I'm not even sure how bad it is. But what I've heard is many of the websites are blocked. I know for sure Saudi. I know for sure, and I'm not even sure which countries block which. But I know, like, even in Pakistan, Wiki Islam, which is run by EXMNA, Ex-Muslims in North America, that's blocked. So we created a mail website. So it's wikiislamica.net. I mean, that was quite quick to set that up. But a lot of the other websites are blocked, you're right. And so that's one of my challenges too. Like, I'm on YouTube, so I don't know if I'm blocked in any way from any of the countries. If YouTube is blocked, but like I try to upload my videos on Facebook as well, just as a backup. But yeah, it is a challenge, constant, like whack-a-mole type of game you have to play to get your content out there. And especially to non-English speaking audience. I've been trying to get my videos subtitled into Somali language, and that's nice. Is that what it looks like? Is that the official screen you see, like when a website is blocked?
I'm guessing that's just a parody of some of them. I think
it looks a little too silly, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks silly.
Stops went to get his hops.
Okay.
Can you share from you, Introverted Smiles, are you also in Canada or are you from the US?
Oh, I'm definitely in the US.
US. Can you two guys share for us what it's like over there as ex-Muslims for you? And is there any threats? Are you able to openly speak in both the US and Canada? What is it like for you guys?
Well, in the U.S., we have 13 chapters now, the ex-Muslims of North America. So very happy about that. I think it's still taboo here in the U.S. We definitely have more freedoms than people in the U.K. People in the U.K., for being ex-Muslim, there's a lot of violence that goes on. People get jumped, get beat up. Over in the U.S., I'm sure if you just say you're ex-Muslim, or my videos spread to people here locally where I live in Florida, it's more of like a taboo and you get shunned and people don't want to interact with you, but it's nothing hostile, I would say, in the US. I think you'll be fine. You can go about your life. Just stay away from the Muslim crowd. I wouldn't say, actually, I take that back. I don't want to say stay away from the Muslim crowd, but there are some Muslims that'll just have a problem with you. But I still have Muslim friends and family, I just can't really be totally open about it and argue back. That's it.
So for me, I pretty much have the same thing to say. I didn't even know you were an EXMNA intro. Anyways, for me in Canada, like, okay, so I'm a huge. So first of all, I don't mention specifically where in Canada I am. I try to avoid getting into that. Like, people who know me know where I am, so that's not an issue. But I'm just being on the safe side, because obviously, there's some risk involved in doing what I do, and I don't want anyone in my family getting hurt. If not necessarily even hurt, it could be less than that. It could be something, they can like create trouble for you in different ways. So, anyways, I won't get into that. But yeah, to to answer your question, it's a similar experience. The Muslim community just acts kind of like awkward around me, and it's like an elephant in the room. It's like your dad died or something, and they don't know what to say to you. And sometimes there's a weird half salams you get where they start saying salam and then they stop and then they don't know what to say, and they're like, hey, how's it going? Hey buddy, like you're now a white boy. Hey buddy, how's it going? Like instead of salam alaikum. And sometimes they'll still say salams, and anyways, it's just a lot of awkwardness. But to your face, they don't usually say anything. They're just like, especially if they know you, like they knew you for your whole life and they saw that you were sincere, and now they're just like confused, right? Like mostly they feel sad for you and they're just depressed. And I had a couple of people start crying when they were talking to me, like my auntie and my sister-in-law. They started crying, you're gonna go to hell and all that nonsense. But unfortunately, I almost started laughing both times this happened, because I just found it so ridiculous that you're crying for me to go to an imaginary hell that you believe in, that I'm going to be tortured in forever and ever. But it just seems so silly to me that it's like a kid crying because Santa Claus is not coming, and you just feel like you feel sorry for them, like they're so upset, but it's not real, right, in the first place. So yeah, that's my experience. Same as intro. It's pretty safe, I think, in Canada for me for the most part. I'm just just taking some precautions just in case, but for the most part, I actually got recognized in public twice, and both times it kind of freaked me out, because it was like someone came up to me and is like, "Are you Abdullah Samir?" And I'm like, depends who's asking. Like, why do you want to know, right? Like that. I was like, but then I'm like, yeah, it's me. And they're like, oh, cool. I watch your videos and I'm thinking about what you said and this. And I'm like, oh, cool, cool. And I'm like, see you later. And I just, took off.
And that's exactly it. Rationalizer once told me about this. He said, I was walking through Birmingham and I was on the side of the road and I saw like just a normal guy. He was just wearing this typical Islamic dress. So he was obviously a Muslim on the other side of the road. And he was looking at him. And he said, at that moment in time, I decided I need to go anonymous, because it's really, I don't know this guy, but he was looking at me and he was really like checking me out. And he thought to himself, does he know me? Is this now something that I need to be careful of? And this is when he said, it's exactly what you are saying. There is some risk involved in what he does. And that's when he had decided no longer to give out like address and things like that.
Yeah, it happens a little bit here as well. I'll post something in the chat here. There's another gentleman that a number of Muslims hate, and I'll put it here as well. He's an African gentleman that is in Speaker's Corner. His name is Sara, S-A-R-A. And if you follow the link there, you'll see some videos of him interacting with Muslims and a couple of threats being made there. So there are a few threats in. And again, this is a small minority of sort of more, I would say, less psychologically stable Muslims in a sense. Not a lot of them, so it's not like there's a big thing going on necessarily. But this is not even ex-Muslims. He's very blunt with his criticism of Muhammad being a pedophile, etc., etc. Now, if somebody asks me, I'll say that, but I'm not running around saying it left, right, and center. So he's very much more a case of being in your face, and he's a little bit infamous over here, or famous, depends on your point of view. And so there is a little bit that going on, especially in Speaker's Corner, where people come regular, so you kind of know people. I'll shake Ali Dawa's hand, for example, that sort of thing. I've been out to dinner with him, etc., and other Muslims. So again, and I think Stops kind of said it, I'm sure he did. If he hasn't, he said it on other shows. We don't hate any Muslim, but I'm very critical of the ideas and the ideology. And I know there's good Muslims because I'm speaking to them regularly as well. So again, and I think you guys would say the same, and so would people like Harris and all the rest. But some people, the more quote famous you get, the more people want to misrepresent your position and say, yeah, you hate all Muslims, or you want to do a nuclear first strike, or some other nonsense like that. And I think most of us are clear that we don't actually hate almost any Muslims. That's just a negative emotion that you don't really want to have in your life if you can possibly help it. But we are critical of an ideology, and that's the difference. And of course, that's what some very liberal people just don't get that message. They equate it with bigotry and this made-up term Islamophobia, when in fact all we're talking about is an ideology.
Well, Rob, I have a question for you. In the UK, specifically Speaker's Corner, around that area, is there any hostility towards Muslims that you approach those type of people and have to talk them out of it and tell them it's the ideology, it's not the people, or is it pretty much safe for the most part?
Are you talking about Muslims confronting ex-Muslims, or who are they?
I'm talking about like people who just have a hatred for Muslims straight out. I mean, I just want to know if they're public out there in the UK around that
Right.
area.
So
Like,
you mean like far right people potentially, or people who have like the ideology that all Muslims are bad or terrorists? That's
Yeah.
very rare. Some people there will be the odd person who goes through there. I mean, it's majority Muslims in Speaker's Corner, 70%, I would suggest at least. So it's on a Sunday for people who don't know. Every Sunday in Hyde Park in London, if you go onto Google Maps and you type in Speaker's Corner, Hyde Park, London, you will get the spot where we all congregate. You'll see it in videos. And so it's majority Muslims, and it sort of starts maybe 10, 11 o'clock. And by, say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon till about 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, that's when there's a couple of hundred people at least. And so people will wander past that have never been there. And you'll get the odd person who's very critical of Islam and may even say, you Muslims are bombers, or you this, that, and the other. And of course, that attracts Muslims over, and you'll get people that are very keen, Muslims, very keen to portray that they're not like that. And of course, we that have looked into this know that most Muslims are not like that. But then I guess Pew polls do show different degrees of conservatism, shall we say, from the small subset of terrorist bombers, as Harris has said, and that circle widens out. But no, it's very rare, and I've never had to pull somebody away and go, "Hey, you shouldn't be saying that." It's rare that you get a member of the public just coming and shouting, "All you Muslims are bombers," and to go into that extreme. But there will be people who will really, on occasion, shout. And there's one great one. I'll find you the link while you guys talk. But there's a one that's got 1.8 million hits now for the British guy that I know personally there in Speaker's Corner, who's doing a bit of rant because it's a Muslim who starts it, and so he responds. And I'll find the link. You guys will think it's amusing. The channel doesn't have many videos, but somehow this video went viral, so you'll be able to see that.
Okay.
Yeah, because thank you for answering that question, because definitely when I was Muslim, I used to be terrified of the Pamela Gellers or Robert Spencers. And, I look at them now as an ex-Muslim, like, they make a lot of sense. I used to be terrified of, these type of people that I created in my mind that actually didn't exist, or it might be the oddball. And I think Muslims need to understand that to take away this fear that they have when it comes to engaging with people about their religion.
Yeah, I think I agree. And you'll get some Muslims who will just paint Pamela Geller or Robert Spencer or Tommy Robinson, whoever it may be, as just racist, bigoted Islamophobes. And that now puts them into a corner. When you throw shit, it's difficult to wipe it off. It sticks easily and it's hard to get off. And so instead of dealing with the criticism, say, hey, Tommy Robinson said this, here's why he's wrong. Now that's a way to deal with it. But when you just attack the person's character, as we know, there's no substance, but that gets into the media. It sounds good because some Muslims, not all, can't really deal with the arguments, and so it's easier just to smear somebody. So I would want to see Muslims challenge their ideas, show us where that's wrong. Or if you're saying they're bigoted or racist or Islamophobia, show me something specific they said that I can agree with or not. But otherwise, you're just making claims. And it's like, but then they mustn't be upset when people make claims about their prophet or about them. Because if they're going to do the same, then they've got to expect it. And that's something maybe we can talk about as well, as kind of the free speech thing that's really been a little bit under scrutiny now in Speaker's Corner.
What's happening? What's this free speech thing you're talking about? There's issues now?
Yes, again, it's been going on a little bit for a while now. Sarah, the guy that I put into that link, he's obviously quite vociferous in Speaker's Corner. And what it does is it challenges Muslims and theists in general, and even just people who don't have a psychological understanding of what happens in a conversation. So I've done a little bit on psychology, particularly in focusing on intimate relationships, but I understand the model. And so when somebody's insulted, essentially, you hear something which you interpret to have a meaning, you then have a negative feeling, and you now have a response based on this whole process. But it happens in an instant, and so now you feel insulted. But in fact, and we could do a show on this really, is people are choosing to feel insulted. And once I can, and this is not my opinion, I will show you how this is guaranteed to be the case. And if it is the case that people choose, in inverted commas, to feel insulted, now the whole thing changes. Because imagine you go to somebody and they say, Abdul, I feel insulted that you said something about the Prophet. And my response, if they were open to it, would be, okay, so I'd explain it. And then I would say to them, for how long are you going to choose to feel insulted? Because, whoa, now it's their choice. The moment you throw in the word choose, now it's no longer your fault. It's them choosing to feel this way. And so that's the psychology that I want to educate people in, because then you can inoculate yourself against the so-called, insult and offense. And so this is what's been happening in Speaker's Corner. Of course, people are insulting the Prophet. And so some Muslims, are not all, and probably the minority, well, I think a fair amount of Muslims feel insulted, but there's a small minority that now gets very vocal, and on occasions it's spilled over with threats. So they haven't actually been fisticuffs, but there have been threats, etc., against certain non-Muslims, often by Muslims, started by Muslims. Now, Sarah did actually threaten somebody, but that was after this guy had said things, that they put his name online, his wife's name, and you're right. That's why you guys, he's not even a Muslim. He's not even an ex-Muslim. But there is a few people, and again, not everybody, of course, but there's a few Muslims that have gone to look for him or for his family, etc. And so he got upset, went back and sort of threatened the Muslim that had originally threatened him. And so that part's caught on camera. And so there's been a few incidents like that. I caught one on camera where he was threatened by another Muslim. I've also got a part where that Muslim came to me and suggested that I had edited the video in a way to make him look bad, which of course, it doesn't take any editing to make him look bad. And so I, of course, put the full video up for him, because I'd done it in a way to separate the two videos in an innocent way, because there was a debate going on. Two people were having a debate. Then Sarah came over and sort of said a few things. And then this other Muslim came over and listened to Sarah. And then Sarah was again, they were saying that his buddy was a pedophile. So he claimed Muhammad was a pedophile. The Muslim got upset and started threatening Sarah and had to be pulled away. And so I split up the...
I'm going to bash your face in.
Yeah, I'm going to smash your face in. So I had two videos. One was the debate, because I knew that the altercation is going to be everybody's focus. So I went, okay, let me split these two videos up so that one, people can focus on the debate. Number two, those who want to look at the altercation and have an opinion can do that. And so I split these two up, but I made them overlap. So it wasn't like I specifically went into the altercation video and, oh, let me just edit it in such a way that a particular person looks bad. In fact, I just pushed it back sort of 10 or 20 seconds to give people a chance. So if you've watched the first part, then you go and watch the second part and there'll be a bit of overlap. But this guy approached me and basically said I was editing it. But he had already made up his mind. So he's not somebody that I take seriously as any sort of person who's thinking rationally. And so I've now put the entire video up. But there is a little bit of this undercurrent of, there's a little bit of sort of bully boy tactics, in the sense of they're going around there trying to, those people that don't like, or they've already pre-decided. And again, this is not everybody. I want to keep stressing that. And so there's a little bit of, we're kind of running the park. They're not saying those words, but that's the kind of intimation that's coming out, when of course that's not the case.
Right. And whoever's just joined, you're listening to Rob from the Jinn and Tonic show, and we have Stops from the Jinn and Tonic show. He's the guy that has a green turban on. And we have IntrovertedSmiles. He has a channel as well. Just post your channel in the chat if you have it open. I guess you probably don't have it open. And I wanted to say, about what you were just saying, that I feel like, the whole Muhammad is a pedophile kind of argument. And, in the chat, someone's saying child rapist. I don't find that, bringing that argument is productive. It's not productive, in my opinion,
No, you're right. Yeah.
It just shuts down the argument. It just shuts you down right now. I was talking to a guy that had a debate. I'm trying to get someone to debate with me or discuss with me, like I told you. And this one guy, his name is Rahmatullah Navruz, and he debated Mufassal Islam, and he said he got so pissed. He didn't say pissed, but he basically hung up after 5 minutes. He got so annoyed with him. And I don't find that's the way to kind of reach people, the biggest chunk. That's one style for sure. Mufassal Islam style, put on the boxing gloves and boom, boom, boom. But in general, human nature will tell you that people will get, they'll just become defensive and they'll stop listening to you. So, in my videos, I go so far that actually say, Prophet Muhammad, like I actually mentioned, Prophet Muhammad said, even though I don't believe he's a prophet, and sometimes I don't say Prophet Muhammad, sometimes I just say Muhammad, but I don't call him Mo for the most part. Sometimes I do feel like being rude and antagonistic, especially when people are being nasty to me. But I have my own morality, my own values. I don't need to lower myself to someone else's standards because they're being, a loser. I don't need to become a loser too, right? So I try to maintain the upper hand always. Maintain my ground, maintain my values, and not get into mudslinging. That's challenging because it happens sometimes that they piss you off, right? but like I try not to get to that. And I'm trying. I want, you know, the goal. What's my goal? My goal is to reach as many people as possible, to get them to think, to get them to open their minds and their hearts, and to see that Islam is actually not true, right? So the best way to do that is by not building, you know, like these mental barriers, and helping them to see that you're not here to, you know, like to attack, but to, you know, to dialogue, right?
Yeah, and I want to ask you real quick, like, let's say if you got a YouTube comment and you have a picture of Muhammad being old and a young Aisha girl, and he has an erection in that picture, even if he comes with the most rational arguments in that comment, yeah, you can argue that you know, he came with rational arguments and you need to tackle that. But at the same time, if for a Muslim's mind, he's just going to shut you off completely because they think you have these hateful preconceived notions of Islam. The reality is that Muslims are sensitive toward their belief.
Yeah, everybody has, like, I mean, that's human nature, right? And I think the other thing too is we need to be more precise, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we need to use our language more carefully, and we need to pick our arguments better too. So instead of saying Muhammad is a rapist or, you know, a pedophile or whatever, I don't say those things. What I will say though is I have a big problem with the fact that the Quran allows you to marry a young girl, and like I give my evidence for that. You know how the Quran says that the waiting period for a woman who has not yet menstruated is, you know, there's a waiting period for her. And so that's the evidence that, you know, even if you married someone that that hasn't reached puberty, you can still sleep with her. Otherwise, there would be no waiting period, because if you didn't sleep with her, the Quran says there's no waiting period, right? So yeah, so basically, what I use arguments like that. I use arguments like, you know, recently I was thinking about it, that, you know, another thing you can say is a child cannot meaningfully consent to sex, basically, right? A child cannot consent. A slave cannot meaningfully give consent. So, like, you know, these are better arguments than just like, and, you know, the other thing too is, it's not a reason not to do it, but like, you know, people are very sensitive about Muhammad, even more than Allah. And, you know, it tends to be that attacking Muhammad can get you killed much more easily, because it just raises a lot of anger and tension. And I had a friend who made a video, and he made a video talking about the Isra wal Miraj, the night ascension of Muhammad. And it was actually a really funny video. I watched it and I thought it was quite comical. He made it like a story where there's a bouncer at the gates, and as he goes up, he's like, "Yo, man," and he's talking to all the prophets, and the prophets are like, he made it like a funny story, but like he actually got death threats, and he had to actually take his video down, or he actually made it unlisted. He got death threats in real life, not like me, like just online. Like, people that know him actually threatened him. Not death threats, but like they threatened him, right? And they said, like, we're gonna, you know, he heard from someone else that they're gonna like beat him up or something, and he lives in the U.S., right? I wouldn't say where in the U.S., but like, you know, so it has the opposite effect that you're looking for. So now he doesn't make any videos. He has to be a little bit more anonymous than he was before. Like, it's just like, it creates more problems, right? When you have that approach, I think. And like, I don't blame Mufassal Islam at all, because I know that he had some issues in his life. He lost his mom. His mom doesn't talk to him. His wife, his wife left him. He can't see his kids. Like, he has so many problems in his life that were caused by Islam.
Who's this guy?
Mufassal Islam?
Yeah.
What about him?
Any details or links that we can have a look at his stuff?
Who is this?
Yeah, sure. He actually interviewed me. He's a Bengali atheist. He's very, very, very popular. Like when he posted my video, I got like...
Oh, this is the guy. Okay, sorry, I didn't know him under that name.
I got like, I think 100 friend requests after he posted my video or something. Like, it was like boom, 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 like friend request. I just got like, so like, he's quite popular. And I don't know if he was a scholar.
Talks. That's it. I get so annoyed with him, because after a while, I mean, at the beginning, I actually subscribed. Then I thought, no, come on. I mean, he just rambles on and on and on. And I said, no, I don't have time for this.
Yeah. His style, he has his own style. So
yeah, a lot of people don't like his approach. He gets a lot of views though. I'm checking his videos that are like a year old. He's got like 40,000 views on it. The thing is, he spent a majority of his life defending Islam, so I think that's why he's so angry. He's on the Islam channel, and he communicates with people like all over the world about Islam. So I think that initial anger phase is still there. A lot of people like it, a lot of people don't like it. He's very bipolar in his fans.
Yeah, and I think it's a case of, different people will be attracted to different styles. And so I'm sure he's helped people. We will help people in our different styles, like Stops and I have slightly different approach. And somebody's actually said, you know what, Stops was quite hard on me, but actually was good for me. And so his approach would work for some people. And I think that's the other thing to recognize. But I wanted to go back to something you said, Abdullah, and maybe there's a different perspective, because what I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you kind of intimated that, okay, there's a certain style that we shouldn't approach some or maybe all Muslims or the majority of Muslims with, which is the sort of insulting style. Now, for me personally, that's not my approach either, but I do recognize that other people have got that approach. And I would offer you a perspective to consider, which is if we allow Muslims to, and again, not all Muslims, I will always say that, but if we allow certain Muslims to dictate the narrative in the sense of they're going to get angry, they're going to make threats, and so we're going to back down, or whoever's going to back down. What, in my view, having done some coaching and training on this sort of behavior, what it allows is for the perpetrator, if I can use that term, it says to them it's okay to carry on this negative behavior. And from my point of view, I want to show somebody that negative behavior is not tolerable or not acceptable, and it doesn't even help them. But obviously they're not in any state to be aware of that. But for us to back down, now it's not going to insult everybody left, right, and center. But what I would rather have is not us going down to the lowest standard, but rather rising all the ships together. So my solution is an education, and it's in particular a psychological education, and teaching people, particularly some Muslims, that number one, being insulted or offended is an illusion. It's not true. I know you think it's true, but if we unpack it and we gave you a course and we explained it to you, you would be in no doubt that in fact you are making the choice. Now, in order to solve that, in order to get out of that, take some time. It's not going to happen overnight. Tomorrow, suddenly you never offended again. I mean, it's possible I could probably get offended. It'd be rare, but it would. But immediately I would recognize that it's my choice. Now, I don't necessarily figure it out in that moment, but it is my choice when I go and reflect on it.
Correct. Okay, so I should clarify what I mean. Because you hear this all the freaking time from Muslims. Why do you have to go and offend my religion? Don't you have better morals than that? Why do you have to offend people? Why do you have to insult me? Why do you have to insult my religion? Like, I don't insult your religion. The Quran says don't talk badly about other gods. Well, hold on there, buddy. Your Quran actually calls, disbelievers filth, okay, najas. So don't let them approach Masjid al-Haram ever after that. Oh no, that's spiritual filth. Okay, so your Quran calls people spiritual filth. Okay, fine. That's the first thing. Second of all, it's just full of insults. It's completely full of insults towards
the worst of all animals.
Yeah, worse than animals, deaf, dumb, and blind, and this and that, and it goes on and on and on and on. So why do you think your Quran is put on a pedestal, and it can say whatever, you can promote that, and it can say whatever it wants, and I can't make fun of your religion. I can't say that this doesn't make any sense. I don't agree with that. And I do believe that mocking has its purpose, right? If you're just mocking for the sake of ego and just to make yourself feel good, then you're not a good person, and you're not, may not have the best effect, right? Because you're just doing it for your own ego and you just want to put the other person down. But if you're doing it, kind of when Ali Dawah goes online and he goes and he's actually making fun of people for doing things that they're not supposed to do in Islam, picks on women, for example. What is the point of doing that? It's just to make yourself look good and feel good, right? So go ahead, Rob. You have a slide you want to show us?
I won't go into very much depth, and I have done this elsewhere, but I'll just show you this. So this is what we call the NLP communication model. And essentially this is an unpacking of what happens when what they call an external event comes in. So if you look over here, so somebody says something, Muhammad is a pedophile, whatever. That's an external event. It's an auditory event that comes into somebody's system, and it gets filtered through these sort of filters. Again, I could do a much more in-depth, analysis of this for you. And based on these filters, which are often through our social conditioning, our upbringing, etc., it goes in and it gets you have an internal representation. So somebody says something, and remember that we can show that this is not objective, because everybody will have a different internal representation. It then affects your state. That's how your body is, your feelings, etc. It affects your psychology, and then it's your behavior. And so if we can, at this point here, have an education that says, hey, you can change this part, then this will change, and so will everything else. And I think that, for me, in like 10 seconds, is really just the way that one can overcome these sort of things, which is, just educating people that it's okay, or should I say that it's not okay to feel insulted. It's just something that you've learned. Other people around you do it, but in fact, it's an illusion. It's a bit like, and the analogy is not perfect, but it's a bit like believing Santa Claus. Young children believe it, and then eventually they get to a point where nobody else believes it. They look around, they ask some questions, and they find out, hey, it doesn't actually exist. But all the time up until that point, they thought it was real. And it's the same with, and I think being offended and being insulted is insidious. It's in some sense worse than some of the other things that are going on, because it's affecting our society, and people are pandering to it because they don't have an education that, in fact, this is just an illusion for the person. Even though it feels real, objectively to the rest of us, it's illusory. And going through this whole process, I think, is helpful for those who are interested, to show that we can unpack this and show you that what's going on can be changed, and it's just your subjective opinion based on certain criteria that's giving you this. And if then you have that education, you now have to be asked, how long are you going to choose to feel this way? And once that question is asked of you, now you have to take responsibility, and it's no longer the person that says something to you. It's all about you. And I think that's what the education process should be, which is, hey, it's all about you, instead of me trying to change the other person's behavior, because I don't really have control over them anyway, unless I'm going to threaten them or do something to modify their behavior. So rather, can I inoculate myself against it, which is what I've said to Muslims. Hey, Sarah is actually your greatest gift. Now, most Muslims wouldn't really understand that, even if I explained it. He's your greatest gift. You can deal with Sarah, the guy at Speaker's Corner. Man, now you've got armor to deal with people, because people like Sarah are not going to go away. Now, I may not, as I say, go with his approach, but he should have the right, and show so to anybody else. And somebody can come and say whatever they like to me. I've got to be able to deal with it in an empowering way for me, because I can't stop them without, some kind of threat or some kind of insidious thing that I'm going to tell them to change their behavior.
I think I just want to share real quick. I think there are a lot of Muslims in America, at least, that do play in with the PC culture, politically correct. Because when I used to do response videos to American Muslims, and I would tackle it point by point, Quran and Hadith only, and I would get messages immediately saying, take down your video. You're creating a crowd that hates Islam and hates Muslims. Therefore, this is a threat. And they would get away with it. They would report it to YouTube, have my videos taken down. And I think that's a little too sneaky, a little too slimy. I mean, I've seen Ali Dawah, for example, do worse on camera.
Exactly. Ask Stops about his channels. Go ahead, Stops. I mean,
no, I'm not going to cry in public.
Not so much crying, but just so that people know that it's not just introverted. It's happening all over the show, but it's only happening on one side of the scale, so to speak.
Okay. I mean, they're closing down the Jinn and Tonic show, of all things. I mean, really, I mean, how can a podcast where people are talking about something, we're not insulting, we're just discussing Islam, and we're talking about the facts, we're looking at the history, we're looking at the sources, we're looking pre-Islamic, we're looking at the geography, we're looking at different things, but never, ever, ever in any way are we going and saying, this is the Muhammad is an asshole. No, we don't do that. And they close it down because it's too uncomfortable for them to bear with the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's unfortunate, and this type of like sneaky censorship will lead to more, far right intolerance and hatred, because if you can't have legitimate discourse, then things just tend to explode, right? We need to support people being able to, especially like you said, like why would you shut down the Jinn and Tonic show? That's ridiculous. But I guess people feel threatened, and it happens to the other side too, like this guy Asadullah Ali, who is he's a kind of Islamist living in Malaysia, and he had someone tell him, this someone is Eddie from the Dean show, I don't know if you guys know him. Anyways, he told him He told Asadullah to talk to me, because Asadullah is an ex-atheist as well, ex-atheist. So what happened was Introverted, I'm hearing myself on your speakers.
He just needs to mute himself, I think, or you mute him if he's not around.
Let me mute him. Yeah, so like I was saying, okay, then I muted him. Yeah, so like I was saying, what was I saying? What were we
You were
talking?
talking about this ex-Muslim,
Malaysia.
sorry, ex-atheist.
Yeah. So Asadullah, okay, he eventually ended up blocking me, but this guy, he has a channel as well, and he also has the same type of things being done to him, where he's promoting like Islamic values, Islamist values, like Islamic State, you know, at one point death to apostates, stuff like that, and he's also being censored by people, you know, reporting his channel, and so I think this kind of stuff happens all over the board. Where it's the most insidious is when you have a government like Pakistan working with the company, an American company like Facebook, to like shut down like atheist pages and pages insulting Muhammad, and like, you know, like big atheist pages like Atheist Republic, and like these pages got shut down sometimes. You know, some of them came back up, some of them didn't, like you said, Jinn and Tonic show. So that's where it gets really insidious, right? But yeah, that is definitely a concern for me.
What is your guys?
How threatened they feel?
I'm sorry?
It shows you how threatened they feel.
Yep.
What is your guys' view yourself, Abdullah, and also Introverted? What's your view on freedom of speech? Should we have virtually absolute or completely absolute, or is there a limit for you guys? Obviously, over there in Canada and the US, what's your view?
Okay, so in Canada, yeah, there's definitely limits, and there's definitely hate speech laws and stuff. One of them was this Islamophobia bill that came about, which again, the right-wing kind of Christian guys got all up in arms about. You know, there was a motion. First of all, it wasn't a law; it was a motion to condemn Islamophobia, and it happened after these 3 people were killed in a mosque.
Is that the 103?
Yeah, I think so. So what happened was it actually had a really, really bad like response. Like people just freaked out, and they were like protesting outside mosques. I mean, this is like getting insane. Like protesting outside mosques, protesting outside high schools, which I thought was quite offensive. Like you got high school kids coming outside the mosque and seeing signs about Islam is evil and Islam is like it's too much, right? Like so like these guys kind of freaked out, you know. Some of the same guys were like, no Sharia in Canada.
Why is it too much?
Well, because the same guys that are saying no Sharia in Canada, and you know, no prayer in school. So there was a huge issue in Toronto where, you know, there's like Muslims were praying they were taking a Zoom, and they were saying their Friday prayers and whatever. And these guys, mostly Christians again, came and made a huge kerfuffle about it, and they had a big issue with people being allowed to pray in school. Yet they have no issue with publicly funded Catholic schools, which of course you have prayers.
Okay, that changes it. Okay, I understand.
That's one thing. The other thing is like you're picking on, you know, it's just a way of, it's like it's such a long way to do things, to be standing on the street. And I guess there's some room to disagree with me that standing on the street and saying no Sharia has its benefits maybe, but all it does is just makes people uncomfortable. You know, people that are just going to the mosque, they don't necessarily even support Sharia law, right? And it's just like it's just antagonism, and it just feels like it's like that video I saw in the UK where, you know, Tommy Robinson, not him specifically, but you know, they were walking through this part of town in the UK with big crosses, and then the Muslims came out and got all pissed about it. And it's just very confrontational, and it doesn't, I don't know, I just don't see the point in that type of approach, right? I mean, so in terms of what you were asking me, sorry, I'll let you talk in 1 second, Stops. In terms of what you were asking me, Rob, about freedom of speech, and I'm not like, you know, I'd like to say that on a lot of these topics I'd remain neutral just because I haven't studied them in great detail. What I do believe, I kind of tend to agree with Sam Harris, what I've heard from him, which is that, you know, when you put too much limits on free speech, then these things just go underground. So, you know, it's challenging when you have people like Anjem Chowdhury coming out in public and saying death to, you know, UK, and, you know, Sharia law will rule you guys, and, you know, we're going to enslave you non-Muslims and this and that. And it gets kind of, painful to see people doing that, but at least they're open about it, and at least we can see it, and at least we can deal with it. So I kind of think that makes sense at this point in time. I agree with that. I don't know about unrestricted, speech. I'm not sure about that. I haven't really thought about it.
Maybe Intro can give us his view from the US side.
Intro, you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, everything that Abdullah Samir just said, I agree with. I think it's okay if I don't know if you guys are familiar with Yvonne. What was her name? Evangelion or something like that on YouTube. She was on YouTube a little while ago. She got taken down. She used to openly proclaim that she was a neo-Nazi. She openly hated black people, hated Jews. And there was this big controversy that she was on YouTube, and YouTube had to take her down her whole channel, even though she got a lot of subscribers. Listen, I think free speech is good. Free speech is definitely a good thing. I don't think we should censor everybody, but you have to ask yourself how effective you are being having all this free speech. When it comes to Muslims, I think it's important for everyone to understand, Muslims regard Muhammad more important than their family. And it says that in the hadith. You have to exalt Muhammad more than your family and your own very being. So when it comes to the Muslim issue, I would say that a lot of people just don't understand it. They don't understand that Muslims put Muhammad in high regard. Now, I'm not saying, you can't criticize his life and you can't criticize his ideas, but it is like helpful to understand that it's better for you to not like go on the street and just scream pedophile, 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 and let's stop Sharia law and stuff. That's okay, stopping Sharia law, all these protests. But at the same time, I want people to come from a sense of understanding. I think with a lot of Westerners, they see what Christianity, how it came down and apart, and they want to do the same thing with Islam. And I think it's a little bit more tricky. I do think the solution is just a little bit more tricky because these people are coming from war-torn countries or countries that were not developed yet. I think you have to just put everything in perspective.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so interesting views, I guess. In some sense, I agree with you, although I don't agree that you can't go shout pedophile, pedophile, or for that matter, nigger, 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 or whatever other terms people find offensive. Because the moment you start to do that, it becomes a slippery slope that never stops. And who makes that decision anyway? Are we supposed to respect Islamic ideas because people hold them, sacred? Well, I hold sacred the truth. And so are they okay to stop talking about God? Because I think talking about God without evidence, one could say, is insulting. Now, I don't choose to feel insulted, but I could run on a rant. And so how do we decide? So it becomes this sort of slippery slope. Plus, the more you're exposed to something, the more it becomes blunted. So it's like, imagine you go work in a sewage factory. The first day you wouldn't go out there going, oh my God, this was like hell. Go there for a month, you won't smell it anymore. And it becomes the same with the words. And so people are so scared of words affecting people, which is hence my view on educating people, which, is a great idea, but are people open to it? Because if people aren't open to being educated, then of course it's much easier just to stay ignorant or to, say, well, you're hurting my feelings, rather than take responsibility. And I think all of us here are not going to go out on the street and do what you're talking about. But I do think it's important that people have got the right to do that. So for me personally, and I'm happy for you to challenge me and we can see if there's, because there could be an exception. I haven't come across one. But for me, it's pretty much I'm an absolutist. My only sort of stop at the moment is where there's direct incitement to violence. So if I went down to Speaker's Corner and I took out £5,000 and I said, £5,000 for the first atheist that kills a Muslim here, there you could probably draw a fair line there. And even then, somebody would have to do something, because it's just me shouting that is not enough in and of itself. There needs to be some action afterwards. So that's the extreme example where I would possibly draw the line. And even there's a bit of a gray area. But anything else for me needs to be said, because if you're going to inoculate yourself, you need to hear the bad ideas or the ideas that you don't agree with, because it's all very well saying freedom of speech. But like you say, Anjem Chowdhury, yes, he should be able to say those things, but he should be able to be confronted and shown that his ideas are wrong by Muslims, ex-Muslims, atheists, you name it. And so that's how we can defeat these things, if you want to call it that, with better ideas. But to hide away from it or to not say it, ideally in a open society, I don't think personally is the right way. I do understand that happens, and people are going to be careful in certain countries, but that says something about the ideology, or at least some people that follow that ideology, because you don't get people doing that about Scientology or Christianity, where they, generally speaking, they're afraid for their lives. It just seems to be one particular religion where people fear for their lives. Generally.
So what do you think about a group like Hizb ut-Tahrir that is going around, calling for the Islamic State, recruiting people? And I actually had a confrontation with one of the guys. He knows me personally as well. And, well, kind of. He doesn't know me personally, but he has a lot of common friends and stuff. And he's a very popular guy in Canada for Hizb ut-Tahrir, one of the kind of leaders here. Eventually, he ended up blocking me. See, I notice a pattern here.
Yeah.
Anyways, because what happened was we were going on his page, and I wasn't trolling. I was being polite, but his arguments were not. He wasn't able to respond to our arguments, and I have the pleasure of building a huge following, or I have a circle of friends who are like-minded, so they were also commenting too, and he ended up blocking me, But the reason he blocked me is because I said, I'm like, Mazen, you're here in Canada using our democracy, using our freedom of speech to call for a system that will take away the same freedom of speech that you're using and would kill people like me. And that's what you want to bring back. You want to bring back the Islamic State. I don't know why they disagree with ISIS. I didn't look into that. But they have the idea they want to bring back an Islamic State that will actually, pretty much, kill someone like me. But at the same time, they're happy to do that in a Western democracy. And, they have the events openly in universities. They come to Muslims, more liberal / moderate Muslim speaker events in university, and they'll kind of harass them. So they do that. And when I was in university, they would come to every single event, Muslim event. There'll always be at least one or two guys. They'd get up and they start shouting at the speaker, saying, you're a sellout and this and that, and Islam this and Islamic State this is supposed to be like that, and they won't use violence, as far as I know. They won't hurt anybody, but this is the type of attitude they have. And so what do you think about that? They're using our system to promote their own nasty, intolerant values, and should we tolerate that?
It's a good question. So where I draw a distinction is when I'm talking about freedom of speech, for me, I'm talking about in the open public sphere. So let's say Speaker's Corner or in the street. As soon as you go inside a building, an organization, an institution, there are rules. And so where you have these conferences, there's certain etiquette and certain rules. So no, I would not say that they've got, quote, the freedom of speech to stand up and shout down a speaker for in any way, because there's a different set there. They've got an opportunity to ask a question. There's a sort of setup there. But going to the bigger question, which is, could they do that outside in the street? Yes, because, and here's why for me, and again, I'm happy to have a different dialogue, but as soon as somebody opens their mouth and says something, we can evaluate their ideas. And so if they're calling for this, now it could be in Canada, and I don't know what your laws are like, that recruiting people to overthrow the government is treasonous. So there could actually be a law against that. But stopping somebody saying something in public just means they're going to go and do it online. And so oftentimes, and that's why I like doing it in Speaker's Corner, let people speak, let them say what they want to say, because it reveals more about them and their ideas that you wouldn't otherwise get to hear. Now, could you draw a line with hateful speech? In my view, you can. I wouldn't draw a line in the sense of saying, no, this is banned. What I would say is, hey, here's why this is hateful, and you can challenge it. And I think most people, I hope, well, certainly most educated people in the Western world can at least think to some degree, and they can see one idea, let's say your idea versus these radicals, and they go, okay, so here's Abdullah's idea, here's these radical ideas. Which society, which A is more reasonable? Which society do I want to live in? And that way, I think you can overcome these negative ideas. But the moment you start to ban them, then it becomes a case of a slippery slope of, okay, it's because we are banning them, it's just because we're in the majority. If in, let's say, 50 years, France becomes majority Muslim, for example, we use France as an example, what then? What happens when they become the majority? And so we want the same, I would suspect we want the same law that if they were in the majority, we would still want that enforced. And so I would want to be able to, and you, I hope, would want the same, is to be able to say whatever we want to say. Now, yes, we've got a different approach to them, but I think the principle for me remains the same, that Andam Chowdhury and these radicals should be allowed to, on the street, in a public area where they're not stopping cars, or in other words, in any other way stopping people from going about their business. They should be able to say virtually whatever they like. Now, if they recruit people, in fact, that becomes a terrorist organization, well, that's probably against the law, and that can be dealt with. But them actually speaking, it's actually a good thing, and it happens. I've heard it happens in Speaker's Corner, where there's quite undercover people that are wandering around. Maybe I've met one of them, I don't know. But that because they are monitoring this sort of thing, because otherwise these guys are doing it hidden away. Let them do it in the street, because now you can identify these people and you know what their ideas are and you can counter it. So for me, pretty much yes, almost anything, as I say, apart from direct incitement to violence, is where my view currently stands, unless somebody can bring a good argument against it. And there may well be an exception. I wouldn't use yours as an exception.
Yeah, I agree with those sentiments. When I was Muslim, I came across a booth that had a bomb on Muhammad's head, and I became angry at it and stuff. But I defend their right to do so, because at the same time, you also have the Muslim side. Anyways, we have a hadith that expels the Jews and the Christians from the Arabian Peninsula. So when it comes to some Muslim countries, they definitely block out our voice and our point of view. So we don't want to become like them at the same time.
Yeah. So, Rob, there was something you wanted to ask me. You said you disagreed with something in my atheist video. What was that?
I don't know if I did. I wanted to clarify really with you, because when you talked about the atheist video, you seem to suggest that we have, in some sense, human beings have an innate disposition.
I thought you were going to say that.
Yeah. So what is your view on, do you view like the fitra or a version of that? Do you think human beings in general have an innate belief in either a god or something supernatural? Or maybe you can clarify what your view is.
I had a feeling, like I was thinking, what is he going to ask me about from that video? And somehow I thought, he's going to ask me about that. So that's good. Yeah, no, I don't think it's like an innate. So, we have a lot of, let's call them biases based on evolutionary history. One of the biases that we know about is that we tend to favor, helping small groups. We feel more sympathy for small groups or individuals over larger groups of people. So if you see an ad with like one little girl, that's like starving, they've done studies and people are like, let's say, willing to donate like $50 or something. Then, you show them like two people. Now it's like dropped to like $20. And then you show like and then you show like a whole crowd of like 1,000 people that just died in an earthquake. You're like, is it time for dinner yet? Like, this news is kind of depressing. I gotta go. It's dinner time. See you later. So it's like, we have certain biases. The other bias we have is towards, sugar and fat. And so, for whatever reason, there's many things about our mind, just the way like we have dreams. And so one of the things that I do think is that it's much easier to believe in God. Not that there's a fitra to believe in God, but it's just instinctive. It's just like, it's kind of like the God to me is like a super ego. It's like you have your ego, and God is like the ultimate projection of your ego. You know what I mean? You whatever you need, you want to live forever, you want to go to paradise, you want to be reunited with your family members, you want God to take care of your kids when you die, you want God to take care of your parents when they're sick, you're praying to God. It's like an ultimate super ego. And I do believe that if you look at the history of humanity, like, for whatever reason, we've always tended to, maybe because we couldn't explain things any better, we always tended to believe in a God. And so I feel, coming from the perspective of, kind of like design in nature and stuff like that, it's just much easier to believe in God. I always believe this, and even to this day as an atheist, I just think you'll never have a majority of people being atheists, because I just think it's much more complicated to come to that conclusion. I do believe there is no God, and I do believe that is a correct conclusion. I just don't think it's an easy conclusion. And I think it's much more difficult to understand, the world and everything in it without using, without resorting to God did it. You know what I'm saying? So that was kind of, that's kind of how I see it. And just the fact that, humans in history have always, turned to some sort of belief in some sort of supernatural deity, whether it was nature or whether it was idols or whether it was some abstract. And, humans have gone through different phases throughout a history of belief. And now, it seems like atheism is becoming much more popular, or agnosticism or whatever. But yeah, that's my clarification.
Okay, cool. Because, there is studies that came up the other day. I think I posted in one of my shows a little while back. there is a correlation with education and non-belief. And so the more educated a society, generally speaking, the less they believe in supernatural entities. But going back to what you were talking about, I would submit to you that we are all born atheists. And the only reason, and if you look at very, very young children, we're not talking about children that once they get to sort of 2.5, 3, when they can understand and talk, etc., then they start taking on the beliefs of their parents or their society or whatever the case is. By that stage, and there's always these and Stops will know this, and he did it long before I did, but there's this claim by some Muslims about the innate fitra. And of course, when you look into it, those studies are not what they're saying. At best, and these are people that studied from 3-year-olds upwards, they believe in like superhuman things. They believe their mom can do things that we know humans can't do, and that's just because they don't have a greater knowledge of the world and the limitations of humans. But my claim would be that we are born atheists. The moment you come out of your mother's womb, you do not have a connection to, well, let's say which God, because that would be Stops' question, I'm sure. Maybe he's asking in the background, well, which God? You know, when you say a God, what God? Is it a God that wrote a book and told people what to do? Is it a deistic type of God? Because I will say to you this, by the way, just because I'm a fairly strong atheist, but I will say to you that I have read an account of God, and I've talked about this on my show before, which is coherent. And were that God to exist, I would actually want to have a relationship. Now, that might sound strange to you, and I would encourage you, if you get a chance, read Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. Just the first 3 books, or even just the first book. Neil Donald Walsh, Conversation with God. He wrote them in late 90s. His claim is that he had a conversation with a God, and he started writing on a piece of paper. And he got responses. He wrote an entire book, word for word, as it sort of came through him, so to speak. Now, all of us would go, okay, how do we know it's not his imagination? And we don't know. But if that imaginary, let's call it for the moment, God existed, if you go and read the book, his questions, the answers that came back, and I met him in person before I became sort of more of a staunch atheist, just a normal guy. So he's not one of these guys that claims to be a guru or anything like that. But that version of a God, which is unconditionally loving, which has various other attributes that one can talk about, overcomes all of the negativity that I would associate if a God existed, the Abrahamic God exists. All of those problems are gone in that version. So I went, wow, if there was a God, I could accept that God. Whereas if there was a God in Islam, I would have to accept it if there was overwhelming evidence, but it would be a bone crushing to find out that was true. I'd be, oh my God, if that's a God, then I could be a better God. Give me the power and I would be better than, the Islamic God. So there is a version of this, but I don't think that people are born with a connection to a God because there's too many of them. So how do they know which one? And it's only through indoctrination or socialization that they actually start to believe it. And as we've said, and again, it's easy to look up, the more educated a society, the less reliant they are on supernatural or superhuman things. So for me, I don't see it that's in the natural state. And all we need to falsify this is to find a group of people that are untouched externally to the wider world who have atheistic beliefs. And what do you know? The pariah people of Amazon are exactly like that. They are essentially atheists. They were not interacted with the outside world. They had a priest went there to try and convert them. And they asked similar questions to us, although not maybe as technical. And they asked him, why did he believe, etc. And it turned out he became an atheist after having met this tribe. And the entire tribe only believes in what's around them. He says it's amazing people. They have a wonderful life. This is a very primitive tribe, but they have no supernatural belief whatsoever. And it wasn't that they lost it because people came in and told them. That's the way they evolved, if you want to call it that. So that's all we need, from my point of view, to put that view to one side.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. And Pull-Ups mentioned in the ask him about a tribe in Brazil that will change your mind, the Piraha tribe. He said to ask you about it.
That's the one. That's the ones I was
exactly the one.
Yeah.
Because this brings us to the question: why do we actually have religions? Why do we still have gods? And this is quite an amazing thing, because the one thing is on the one hand we have this thing, this it's the comfort. Because if you do not know what is happening to you, if you are sick, if you have cancer and you wonder, why me? Why am I getting this? Maybe it will go away. So you start thinking crazy things, and you start getting comfort and hope from something that does not exist. It's like if you're in a car and you are drowning in a river or something, you hope that Superman or Batman are going to come around, open up the car and rescue you, because you are going to extremes at that moment in time because you are desperate. And this is why if you are lazy or desperate, this is when you turn to gods, because on the one hand, gods are an excuse to stop thinking. And then on the other hand, you start praying to things which you don't know, thinking that it's going to, maybe I'm going to win the lottery. Maybe it's something is going to happen that will improve my situation. And that is why we still have these religions. That's why we have these gods. It's just that, you know, if you look at all the claims that Muslims are making, if you look at all the things that they are saying about Barrett and I forgot her name now.
Petrovich.
And they go and they claim that they have done all this research. No, Petrovich, they don't do that. There is no research that has ever shown that children require gods. Never, ever, ever. It's just that it's wishful thinking. But we have the gods because it's much easier to stop thinking. It's much easier to say, oh, well, God is going to make me, you know, give me a new car or something like this. And then, lo and behold, some people do win the lottery and they say, you see, I told you it's true.
So I'd be willing to reconsider my opinions. One thing that's kind of seems unique about me is not unique to me only, but I think people that are willing is a sign of an open mind is the fact that I'm definitely willing to reconsider my opinion. So yeah, if that's the case, then maybe we are born atheist. I'd be willing to look into it. I'll check out that book. Thanks guys.
But I don't think we're born atheists, by the way, because atheist has a very special meaning and very special contents in the word. So you can't be born as an atheist because you can't really contemplate what it means to be a theist, to be an atheist.
Good point. So if you, by the way, do you guys know of Ozymandias Ramesses II?
No.
Go and watch those videos. He's excellent. He's a philosopher. He goes into a great deal and he talks about this. In fact, people who don't know, here's an interesting thing for you, which I didn't know. People who don't know, a baby is not actually an atheist. You're quite right. I stand corrected, Stops. A baby is actually a non-theist. So a non-theist is somebody that has no understanding of what a God concept is. Whereas an atheist has a concept that has been sent to them, or they've got sensory input that says, hey, here's the characteristics of a God, and we've evaluated that and gone, no, we don't believe that. We reject it. We don't know for certain. So we are not agnostic. In other words, we don't say, or most atheists don't say, hey, I know for certain, like maybe Aaron Ross, close to being, you know, the very strong atheist, as you call it. He says, no, definitely doesn't exist, and I can show that. Now, I'm not quite in that position. I don't know for certain, but I believe that a God does not exist, and I reject the theist claim. So for me, I'm what some people might call a soft atheist, or if I give you the full title, agnostic atheist, but that's a whole different discussion. But you're right. So people who have never heard of the God's concept are non-theists, and those of us that have and have rejected that belief claim that's been given to us is an atheist. So you're right. Babies would be a non-theist rather than an atheist. But look up Ozymandias Ramesses II. It's very, he's got a lot of good stuff.
Can you, I'll have to get that link from you. And it sounds better to say baby's a non-theist. I think that makes more sense than saying atheist. Saying the atheist sounds kind of funny to me.
Yeah, okay. Quite right. So yeah, I would say that those people are non-theists. But let's put it this way, that I don't think anybody's born with a belief in, let's say at the minimum, the Abrahamic gods. There may be a version of God.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I wouldn't even begin to claim that.
We don't know all the different gods. There may actually be one out there of the, you know, hundreds or thousands that there are that is in fact true. Maybe it's the conversation with God. Maybe it's something else. But I'm pretty sure, or I have a high level of certainty in my belief rather than I know, that we aren't born with a belief in the Abrahamic gods, be it Christianity, Judaism, or Islam. And so from that point of view, I think we could say with a fair amount of certainty that we are non-theists when we're born. And
right.
Yeah, but you're right. It's because we don't, if we were educated from the moment we were in the womb and we came out with some education of the natural world, I think then it would be unlikely that we would be looking to some kind of superhuman, supernatural entity, because we'd have more of an understanding how thunder works, how rain forms, how the climate works, tectonic plates, whatever it is. We go, oh, we've got a natural explanation. I don't need to invoke something supernatural or superhuman to explain something that can, in fact, be explained naturally.
Sort of a simple question.
On the other hand, somebody did come. Oh, sorry, sorry, go.
I just wanted to ask real quick for you, Stops and Rob, did the Abrahamic narration of hell ever scare you guys, ever?
No.
You always found it funny or silly?
Yes, I did, in a sense that because of the morality, because of the immorality of that, I'm I'm more certain that the hell doesn't exist than a God doesn't exist. And so I can't say with 100% philosophical certainty, but I would go to the 99% or the Richard Dawkins scale of 6.9 recurring, that a hell doesn't exist. Because if it does, then that wouldn't be a God as I would define a God, which is, you know, an unconditionally loving God. That's the minimum standard I require from a God that I would want to have any interaction with. He must be unconditionally loving, which immediately jettisons judgment and punishment. And so that concept for me, but I do understand how theists would have that, you know, because that's been inculcated from a young age. And there's this cosmic justice that a lot of us think we need. I don't necessarily. If Hitler, quote, got away with it, he got away with it in that sense. But a lot of theists that I come across have this innate, or it seems to be innate, it's socially constructed, I would argue, belief or need for cosmic justice in case the drug dealer gets away with it, or, you know, Stalin killed a billion people. There must be some punishment. That makes me feel better. You know, it's fine to feel better, but we don't believe that that's true. And so, yeah, I would, the belief in hell is just like so far out of my mind that it couldn't possibly be the case.
But again, the point that I was just trying to make, if somebody were to convince me, I would change my mind. Like if Jesus would now rise and say to me, look, I'm Jesus and here's the wine, or I don't know what he would have to do. I have no idea because I don't know what a God is. But then if a God were to present itself, were to manifest itself, there were arguments that would show me that this is not just another human being or an alien, but actually some sort of a God. I mean, any kind of technology that is advanced to mine, I would probably consider it to be a God. I would then change my mind. I would not worship this. And how do you guys feel? Would you change your mind and would you worship, or would you also say, well, I mean, I have no choice but to accept it, but I would not worship?
I was scared out. I was scared out of my mind. Go ahead, Abdullah.
Okay, no, you go ahead. Actually,
No, I
tell
was
us
just
about.
saying. You know, back when I was a Muslim and a theist, like I think that really made me stick with the religion. Just the fear of the hellfire, and that happens with Muslims across the world.
Yeah, you know what? I think I was scared of. Yeah, I was definitely scared of hell too, because I believed that Islam was true and it was, you know, it was all real, and so to the point of like every little tiny thing, I used to second guess myself and question myself. It makes you OCD, right? Like, did I, like, let's say for example, I walked out with an extra apple in the store, right? I'd be like, oh my God, like I have an extra apple, right? I used to think that like, some of them are really silly too. Like some of the examples, I'm almost embarrassed to say it. Like, I used to tell people that like, they have Tim Hortons in Canada and they have this roll up the rim where you can win like prizes like a car or something. So I used to tell people that, because this is what I was taught, that if you buy that coffee with the intention of winning something, that's gambling. So you shouldn't gamble. You should buy the coffee with the intention of having a coffee, not because you want to win something. Like stuff like that, it just messes with your mind, right? So like, every atom of evil you do, and then it's like you get scared, like every little thing, like, is this meat halal enough for me? You have Muslims that are like, we have two different types of halal meat here in Canada. And it used to be there was only hand slaughtered before, but then there's now machine slaughtered, right? Like this Maple Lodge Farms, which is a big factory, they do meat, and they now have halal meat, but they use a machine, right? And then now you have Muslims who are like scared it's not halal enough, right? Or you have Muslims that wear hijab, they're scared they're not doing enough, they want to wear niqab. So it's this constant fear that makes you do more and more and more. And I think this actually leads people to become terrorists as well, right? I mean, I'm not saying everyone's going to become a terrorist. Majority of Muslims will not become terrorists, but like, it's kind of like an insanely easy way out of the whole thing is just to like die for the sake of Allah. And I talked about that in my video, ISIS and Muslims, about jihad. And I talked about how, it's just an easy way to get out of the wall. It's like a get rich quick scheme, right? You got all these bills to pay. You got this big bill coming up, and it's like, well, someone offered me like $1 million if I just, kind of like die for the sake of Allah. And I never used to believe that suicide bombing was halal. I used to think suicide bombing was considered like killing yourself, and it was haram. But I did think that if there was like a legitimate jihad, you could go for it. And I used to think that maybe Palestine and Israel was like a legit kind of jihad. They're oppressed or whatever. So I'm like, yeah, that's where I want to go. I want to go and die, over there. So I think this whole fear of hell can lead to some kind of insane conclusions, and to make you kind of do some crazy things, or maybe just give you some mental anxiety all the time. And I feel like I see some of my family members like that. They're always, worried about not doing enough good, and they constantly feel guilty that they're not reading enough Quran, they're not praying enough, salah, namaz, and they're not doing enough nafil and sunnah prayers, extra prayers on top of the prayers, on top of the 5 prayers, and they're not donating enough to the mosque, and they're not donating enough to the poor people, and they're not doing this enough, and they're not doing that enough. And it's like you can never win. It's like you can never be satisfied. You always have to do more and more and more and more and more. And I think this is kind of this is a problem with Islam, and I don't know about religion in general, but specifically with Islam, this is a big problem. It gives you big time headaches, right? And it's like, especially if you're Salafi Muslim, and it's not only Salafis, even Sunnis in general, like everything is haram. Like it's like music is haram. Like you can't eat even the halal meat. Like half the halal meat is not halal enough, right? And it's like, it's like, what do you do? Like, how do you live your life? You can't go for Halloween. I couldn't take my kids for Halloween. I couldn't buy a house as a Muslim because of mortgage. So it's like you can never do enough for Allah, like apparently, except dying for the sake of Allah. That's a good way, like to get all your sins forgiven. But like other than that, it's like Allah's never happy, like no matter what you do, right? So it's like you go for Hajj once is not enough. You got to go for Hajj 2 times or 3 times. It's like, yeah, my sins were forgiven 2 years ago when I went for Hajj, but I got to do it again, right? And it's like, so I think that's the mental anxiety, not just the hell, but it's the whole, like everything in your life has to be judged, and you're going to be like, it's going to be like a movie reel, and everything is going to, now I feel a little bit more peace of mind that like, I still have the same values that if I find let's say I find something on the train, I take the train to work, I find someone left an umbrella, I personally feel guilty taking that umbrella. I don't know why. Like, it's like the guy's not going to come back, but I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll go drop it at the lost and found. Not because I'm such a good person, but I don't know, for whatever reason, these morals, we evolved with this altruism, because I feel like this is what's good for humanity, and this is what we evolved in, because me helping you means you help me, and we all thrive, and we have a positive sum gain. So for whatever reason, whatever evolutionary reasons, I have these values, and wherever they came from, right? So maybe it's evolution, maybe it's a bit of upbringing, maybe it's a bit from Islam. And I have no problem saying I'm taking the good things from Islam, because Islam does have some good things in it, just like Christianity and any other religion. There's no harm in that, right? So like, I feel like, yeah, the fear of hell thing now, it's like, hell is such a joke. It's like, it's not even funny. It's such a joke, like such a joke. Like it's like, it's so ridiculous, the idea of hell. And I tell people that are scared of hell, like just keep doing research, just keep learning, and you will see like Islam cannot be true. Like once you find that out, there won't be any fear of hell. It'll just go away.
I think you've made a very good point there, which is, if I summarize it in one way at least, the foundation, the underpinning of the Abrahamic religions is one of fear, which is, if I don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to go to hell. Now, most people don't think of it in that way, but if you ask them questions and you dig down a little bit, you'll find that's what it is. It's something you quite rightly said. Well, you don't, and it's reciprocal altruism. It's the golden rule. There's good reasons, and we have got a moral system. I'm a believer in the moral landscape of Sam Harris, where we can have objective. It depends what we mean by objective. Moral standards without a God. And even when you investigate the so-called moral standards that the theists come up with, that's highly problematic as well. But it is a case of us trying to get along in the world, but what's the best way to do that? And the whole thing of fear for me is a nail in the coffin for it. And we could go through, how would a God, why would a supposedly semi-loving God, because they can't say he's unconditionally, no religion can say God is unconditionally loving. So the Christians come with what I consider like I can't understand what they mean when they say all loving. Muslims don't generally say that. They just say God loves the believers type of a thing. But then of course they throw in free will, which of course, if we've looked into that, that's a non-starter either. So we don't have free will in the sense most people understand. So the whole thing that it's based on is a fear-based foundation. It's not based on good. You are kind of told, you are cajoled into doing certain things out of a fear of not doing them. And that whole philosophy, that ideology is, like you say, so foreign. And I think that's a way to speak to people, is go, hey, and because they've probably never thought about it in that way. So it's a case, maybe we should do a hangout just on morality itself, compare Islam with secularism, etc., and then see, how does it stack up in reality? Because most people have not thought about it.
Yeah, I think you made some really good points actually, and I think that's a great idea. We should have a talk just on morality because it's a huge point for many non-Muslims. And I'm amazed, Rob, how much we agree on stuff. Like you read the Moral Landscape, I read that book. You read his Free Will book, I read that book, and I agree with. I was gonna ask you if you believe in free will, and apparently you don't. So like we're in agreement on a lot of
No,
stuff. It's
I'm,
quite
I'm a
amazing.
determinist. I listened very closely when I had their conversation with Dan Dennett about compatibilism because I actually went, do you know what? I'm quite happy to change my mind. Here's my position. I will change my mind to the best available evidence, the overwhelming evidence, or whatever I can see to make the most sense. Now, in the case of, let's say, evolution or cosmology, we go with the experts. We are justified in doing that without having to have an in-depth knowledge of those topics. But on morality, I was listening really. There's a podcast with Sam Harris talking to Daniel Dennett for about an hour and a half. They were in
Listen to that.
have you listened to it?
I listened to that too. I was kind of
Yeah,
confused about what the conclusion was from
that's the
that.
thing. I listened to Dan and I'm going like, I really want to get your point, Dan, but it did seem like he's redefining what most people understand as free will, as long as it comes from inside your body. But if you don't have control over it, if it's external atoms or molecules that are bringing up the next thought, because we don't know what we're going to think next, what sense have you got control? And so the compatibilists just basically, like Dan Dennett, go, well, hey, as long as it's internal and you're not coerced, then that's fine, because they also accept determinism. But it's just the fact that they want to
Yeah.
make that compatible with what some people understand as free will. So, yeah.
I almost feel like he wants to just say that we have free will, kind of, because people want to like say that, and that's how it's like a working model. But I'm okay with just saying it's a working model. Like it's just an illusion. It's kind of like we can accept free will for the sake of the law system, but in reality, it's an illusion. It's a working model, whatever you want to call it. And maybe Daniel Dennett, he feels like maybe he's kind of like like Jordan Peterson, that he's worried that if people think there's no free will, it's a slippery slope. I don't know. I didn't really get Daniel Dennett's point, to be honest. Maybe I need to listen to it a little bit more, but yeah,
I agree with you, though. I think there's a practical reason why one could avoid that, because once people know they don't have free will, if they were to become the case, you would get what I would call low consciousness, lower evolved people's psychology going, hey, I can just use that as an excuse. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we can't lock up or punish people, even if they don't have free will in the sense that we understand. We want to keep them away from the rest of humanity because they are a danger to us, even if they don't have control over themselves in the full sense of the word. But I think you're right. I don't think Dan Dennett is doing it for that reason, but that is an implication for our view. If we do believe that, means that people are ultimately not responsible for their actions in the wider context that most people understand free will. And now, if that were the case, now that would affect the justice system and our whole society. So it's a bigger than most people think at first glance.
I don't understand free will. What is free will?
Most people understand free will as you could have done something. If we rewound the clock, you could have got up on the left side of your bed instead of the right this morning, and you are in complete control of your thoughts, your actions, etc. That's how most people would, if you ask them on the street, that's how most people, they wouldn't use those words, but if we ask them enough questions, that's essentially what most people would think of as free will. Now, we know if you rewind the clock that it would run exactly the same. We know this. And so this is not up for dispute. But of course, libertarians or some theists, it has to be the case, because if it is predestined, then that makes it even more of a mockery that God could judge us if he knew. Now, I think they cannot escape the omniscience free will dichotomy, but this makes it even worse. And so there's a desperate attempt by theists and some other people to avoid what seems to be the overwhelming belief by most philosophers and neurobiologists that determinism is true, even if you take into account quantum mechanics. So, because some people think, if quantum mechanics is a little bit uncertain, that might affect the world. But even if we did prove that quantum mechanics does in fact give us randomness, we're still not in control of ourselves. If something random is going to happen that you don't have control of, what sense of free will have you got? And that's what most people, they just think they've got free will. But when you examine it just doesn't stack up.
I still don't understand it. What is free will? Is free will linked to God's?
No, nothing to do with God's. It's the freedom of you to be able to think and act in any way you want, and that you have full control over it. And if we rewound the clock 10 minutes ago, you would have said something differently than what you now said or what you did say. And neither of those is possible. But that's what most people understand by free will.
And we don't have that.
No, we don't. It's an illusion. We think we do, but we don't.
I have a video on free will, which I kind of summarize in 10 minutes some of the points. Of course, you can just watch Sam Harris's 1 hour video. He has a video on there, or you could buy his book. To be honest, he doesn't say much more in the book than he does on the video. So if you just watch the video that he has online about free will, you can kind of get the point of what he's saying.
Yeah.
About that. Yeah, but to me, I kind of agree with, not kind of, I agree with Rob. I do believe we don't have any free will, that everything in your life is determined by the combination of your genetics, your life experiences, and, you know, the situation in the world. And, you know, if you were in the exact same set of atoms that you are now, and you were in the same situation, you would do the same thing. So if you rewinded the clock like 10 minutes ago, like even, you know, thoughts that pop into your brain, like where do they come from? Like can you choose to think about something? You can't. It just pops up in your brain, right? So it's kind of like a big topic, and atheists hate it because you know, if you don't have free will, then like Rob was saying, it just creates a much bigger problem for the world punishing. And you know, there's a connection, sorry, between people believing in free will and like how much they like to punish people. So there's a nice TED talk about the dark side of free will, where he shows that, you know, in countries like in places in the US where there's a much higher religious population where they believe in free will, they're more likely to implement punitive punishments, you know, punishments for the sake of punishing people rather than like reform or protecting us from them. It's more about punishing because they think that, you know, if you punish them, then, you know, they're getting the justice, right? It's all about justice, right? So I personally agree with Rob and Sam Harris that there is no such thing as free will. And if there is free will, it's very limited. It's quite limited. So that's what I believe. Yeah.
Is this why a lot of ex-Muslims that convert to Christianity, they leave Islam and they say, you know, there's no amount of good deeds that we can do for God to get God's pleasure. So we're going to accept Christ and he's going to take care of us. Is it this reason that what you guys were discussing, that they accept Christianity because they don't have a good understanding of free will?
No, I don't think so. I think all Christians have to believe in free will because I don't think there's a way around it, right? Rob, am I correct? Like, if you don't believe in free will, the whole putting people in hell makes no sense because you didn't choose to be a disbeliever. Like, you know, people that's born in India, like 90% chance, if they're born in a Hindu family, they're going to end up Hindu. Why would God punish them for that? Like, it's like, you know what I'm saying? There's so many things that affect, it's a completely unfair test in life, right? If this is the case, and you know, especially if we don't have free will, and like it's your situation plus your genetics. You know, when you look at, for example, things in the environment, like when leaded gasoline was being used in the US, people were more violent. They tended to do more violent acts and be more aggressive because the lead was affecting the brain and making people violent. So that's another example of how, you know, people get influenced by the environment. Sometimes, you know, people have brain tumors that cause them, and Sam Harris mentions this in his book. This guy came and he's like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. And he like killed his wife and his kid and he killed himself. And when they did a surgery on him, they found he had like this big tumor pressing in his brain, right? So it's not necessarily has to be a big tumor, but maybe it's a small thing that affects the way you think. And so, you know, the brain that you're given, the circumstances in life that you experience, like all of these things make you into what you are. And it's like, that's why I don't think that we actually have free will. I think we're just doing what we're biological machines, right? So maybe there is some sort of free will. I don't know. But I think if there is, it's very limited.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's free will. Sorry, you carry on, Stops.
No, I just said I totally disagree.
I just want to answer Intro, and then Stops. Maybe you can tell us why you disagree. Intro, you asked the question if people go over to Christianity, and I think one of the reasons there that answers to some people that still require a God, because I'm surprised when people leave one particular religion, they jump to the other. For me, it's like, why didn't you guys think of what I would consider the most reasonable position, which is non-belief? But obviously they do hop between religions. But going from Islam to Christianity, what the Jesus sort of story seems to give them is this way to get out. To the moment you accept Jesus, and if you're a fairly good person, then you're going to go to heaven. Whereas like in Islam, you've got to keep doing stuff continually non-stop. Whereas if you become a Christian, as long as you don't do bad things, you can live a pretty good life. You can still ask for minor sins and forgiveness, but it's less dogmatic in the sense of like making there's a lot, once you get to that point, you can do something and then Jesus forgives your sins. So you could be a murderer and on your deathbed, you genuinely believe in Jesus and all's forgiven. You know, but of course, Christians don't like that. But I think that could be the appeal for some ex-Muslims that go over to Christianity, go, hey, he seems like a loving guy. And compared to Muhammad, he is more passive than Muhammad. And he's got this whole, the myth around him is that, hey, if you just believe in him and accept him as your personal savior and the Son of God, hey, well, then you can go to heaven. And so that's an easy way in for some people. But of course, looking at the numbers, the Pew polls, people are leaving Christianity in the millions. They're joining the non-aligned, so us, in other words, the non, and Islam is picking up. Now we're talking about people that are actively converting or deconverting. Christianity is losing it. It's the biggest religion losing people, according to Pew status. I've got in one of my videos. Of all, yes, Islam is growing by birth rate, not because people are converting because it's, you know, they've made a critical decision. I would suggest the opposite. But Christianity is losing a lot of followers. And so those that do come over, I think, like you said, the appeal of Jesus is kind of one of those views.
I think part of the appeal as well to become a Christian is that it gives you a community. It gives you some of those benefits that people are looking for with religion, right? So there's a community, there's a church, there's friends, and there's a whole, like again, back to the natural kind of belief in God thing as well. And people want to believe, they still believe in some sort of God. A lot of people leave Islam and they still believe in God. So they just attach themselves to, you know, some other religion, and then they don't have to worry about all the the morality issues, especially if they left Islam because of the morality issues in it. I think Christianity just seems to have a natural appeal. And like you said, it's kind of an easy religion in the sense that you just accept Jesus died for your sins and you go to heaven, you get all the benefits of, you know, being with your loved ones and paradise and all that stuff. So
that's why I converted. But I want to go back to Stops. He said he didn't believe free will is an illusion. And I wondered, because it's great to have different views. So why do you think that that's not the case?
Oh, and I was just going to say, I agree so wholeheartedly with everybody, because I think this is the only appeal religion has. This is the social factor. I see this in living daylight because, what is she? She is my sister-in-law, I suppose, because she's a Jehovah's Witness, and this is her social life. That's all she has. They ostracized her when she left for a while. And they said, well, you're no longer allowed to come here and nobody's allowed to talk to you. And she was on her own. So she went back just to get the social life back. And this is the only thing that they have. So the social factor that Islam proposes is very, very dominant, I think, because if I go, for example, from India or from Pakistan or Bangladesh or whatever, I come to Saudi or Egypt, doesn't matter, I will find a mosque where people will automatically take me in just because and simply because I'm a Muslim. And this is, I think, the appeal that religions have. That's why I think we still have religions. Okay, with the free will, well, it's very easy. If I go and I look at physics and I go and look at Heisenberg and I see, for example, that an accelerator pedal is governed by quantum physics. A traffic light is governed by quantum physics. The way that it works is I will never know when exactly this light is going to change from red to green. And when it does, I'm going to accelerate. And this then determines if I'm going to have an accident another 100 kilometers down the road or not. So I think this uncertainty principle that we have governs our lives. So there will never be an exact moment the way that it is. There will never be something that you can like determine precisely. So there's always this thing where you need to take decisions in your life depending on external circumstances over which you have no control, and therefore I very much have free will. Even the alarm clock is going to change its time by some milliseconds, which are going to determine whether or not I'm going to slip in the shower or not.
Yeah, but you just said that you didn't have free will. So if I understand you correctly, then you agree that you don't.
I said I do.
Okay, but then free will for you does not mean you have complete control over your thoughts and actions.
No,
I do. Saying, well, you just said you've got uncertainty, so you can't possibly have control then.
I said the uncertainty comes in when I am governed by outside sources, which I am not.
Do you not think that you are governed?
Whether the alarm clock goes a little bit earlier or later determines whether I get up on the left or right hand side of the bed. I decide that.
Okay, I think we'll have a conversation on the stops, another hangout, because we could go on for quite a while.
Yeah,
No,
I think that's a good
the
idea.
end. No, that's
No,
all.
no, it's not the end by a long stretch. I will go into it with you. I am very, very certain that I can persuade you otherwise if you're open to it. I'm very certain.
And I'm very certain you can't because it's illogical.
Okay, we'll do it for another time. It's all right.
Okay, sounds good. And we've been going on for quite a while, so we should try to wrap this up.
Again, I
any other-
agree.
I think so. But why did you agree? That's the question.
Because I have the free will to do so. Nothing governs me to agree with you on this.
That's what you think. But did
Yes. Do you know the next thing you're going to say?
So, what else? Is there anything else we should discuss before we get going?
What I will say to you is, obviously, thanks so much for having us on. It's been an absolute blast, and to Introverted Smiles as well. Can you put up your channel? I'll add that to the link, and I'll tell people to come and subscribe to you as well, Introverted. So if you ever want to do a hangout, we'll do that. I think the more that we as non-believers can have this discussion amongst ourselves and connect around the world, because that's the one thing that I do notice. Whereas the believers have got this sort of, in some sense, this community, because they're all believing, so they all have that. I notice atheists don't, so we've got to try a little bit harder to have that sort of community, because we will disagree on many different things, as Stops and I often do, but we can do so politely, we can do so in an adult manner, but I do think building the community in the sense of like we're doing now is valuable, because that's the one thing that I think when I sometimes look at it, we are lacking, is like we're more like cats. So I would, and not in a derogatory way. Some theists are like sheep; they will follow. But we're like cats, so you can't hurt cats as easily. So it's like, can we sort of in some way have these sort of discussions? Because I think it is valuable, particularly if we get some believers. But I will go on Speaker's Corner tomorrow. And if I can find Ali, I will ask him on camera, if I'm able to, whether he wants to have a discussion rather than debate. And I'll frame it in such a way as to say, hey, you're welcome to have it. I'll moderate it if that's useful, and just the two of you on there, you have a discussion, and because he will obviously want to challenge you on whether you really were an ex-Muslim. That's his approach, which you obviously know about. So I will do that if it's possible tomorrow. But I do want to thank you for this.
Like someone in his situation has too much to lose if he debates me, and which is why he actually backed out in the end. Someone actually told him. Yeah. Actually, this has been a pattern multiple times now. People they go and warn people not to debate with me. Like, it's happened multiple times. Like, even that Natmatullah guy, somebody messaged him and said he's my high school friend. I have no idea who it is, and told him, don't debate Abdullah. He actually told him that. Like, even though the guy would have been a complete, like, it would have been such a funny debate, but whatever. Like, someone told him not to debate. Someone actually messaged Ali Dawa and told him, don't debate this guy. So, you know what? It doesn't have to be Ali Dawa. It doesn't have to be someone that has like a platform that they're gonna become like embarrassed or look dumb or something. If they don't do so well. I think that's what he's scared of. If it could be just any Muslim that's kind of motivated to speak about Islam, and you might, I don't know, have you had experience getting people online to talk about these things? Like, have you ever had success with that?
We get a couple of people onto our show, but I've not had a one-on-one discussion with anybody. Although there's a guy called Saracen, he may be watching. He did comment earlier. He might have a conversation with you. There are probably a few people. I haven't had success yet with anybody from Speaker's Corner, because I think there you can come down and just make a lot of claims, and it's much harder to refute. Whereas if you do it online, you can look it up, and it's not so easy. Although they do occasionally do it, I can ask the question, but I haven't been that successful on one-on-ones with most Muslims in Speaker's Corner anyway.
Okay. I've had a couple of encounters with Muslims, and the only result was mudslinging.
Well, people are willing to discuss with me in person, but nobody wants to discuss on camera. That's the thing. They don't want to do it in public. So that's the challenge I'm having. I want to move past just me talking on my channel by myself. I'm glad I've started doing this now and having conversations with other people like you guys. But I also want to have discussions with theists, and I'm finding that especially Muslim theists, and especially on the topic of not whether God exists, but about Islam, specifically Islam. Right? And I'm having a challenge right now finding someone to do that. So yeah,
I'm surprised. Come on, people are scared of anyone who knows something about Islam. It's been like that for ages. I've tried to get sources. I've tried to get Rashid. I've tried to get all these people. They will not talk to people who know Islam. That's it. You're going to have a tough time.
Yep. So that's
I'll
fine.
See what I can do. I'll see what I can do. See if there's anybody. Yeah.
Alrighty. Okay, it's been an awesome conversation. I had to move my tablet because it was dying. It's about to die now, which is why I had to swap my screen. But thank you guys so much. Thank you, Introverted. Introverted, is there anything you want to add?
No, just for the fact that, I noticed you said Saracen. I noticed some of his talks on the Gin and Tonic show, and Marshall even too. I just want to give a shout out to those two. There are people that question their beliefs as Muslims, and I respect that. And I just want to clear up the misconception that ex-Muslims are not here to insult you or degrade you. We're here to discuss, and I hope that some Muslim challenges us, ex-Muslims and non-ex-Muslims alike. We could just have a discussion. There's nothing at stake. I think what you mentioned earlier was correct about Ali Dow. He's got over 300,000 subscribers. If he looks bad on camera, that's not a good thing. Or Yasser Qadi, he makes a living, 6 figures promoting this religion. So if there's any Muslim out there that just genuinely wants to discuss their beliefs, I'm here. Abdullah Samir is here. Spam is here. And Rob is here. And we're all going to do it in a friendly manner. There's no pressure. And thank you for having me on the show. It was nice. I always enjoy these. Thank you.
No problem. Rob, Stops, you guys want to add anything before we go?
Not from my side. Fine. Great. I loved it.
Awesome.
Yep, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll do it again. I'm pretty sure we will do some more again. So we're on every Friday at 7 p.m. UK time or 8 p.m. UTC. So if any of you guys want to drop by to the Gin and Tonic show, feel free. Hit me up on Facebook and I can give you the link and you can come on as panelists at any stage. And I'm sure we'll do more of these. So thanks very much from our side as well. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. And Stops, you have a channel, right, as well?
I don't know what to say because it's just been closed down.
Oh, no.
I'm using sort of StopSpamming, but I started a new channel today thanks to you, because you came on yesterday and you gave me the story and I said, okay, you've just triggered and you've just done this. So I opened this new Quran Claims and Reality channel where I'm going to take a factual look at very, very quick clips. Anybody can contribute. Anybody can come in. If you have a claim that you have heard of in the Quran that you've heard Muslims make, you can go refute it, look it up, do the research, put it on there. What a pleasure to have several people go and contribute and give Muslims some sort of a repository where they can look up, oh, I heard this claim. What is the opposite side saying about this? And I think this is very, very important. If somebody has a doubt, do mountains really placed on top and they do this and this? Come on, let's look at it. And this is what I'm going to do now.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So I'll get that link from you and I'll post all of those in the video description. Thank you guys. It's been awesome. This was a great conversation to have. I think we covered a lot of good topics.